Chapter 2:15. And Wang gave the order. Whether it was Xing Xiao or Enchanting, both of them had to instantly gather their thoughts and take their respective positions. At this time, the equipment on the roofs of the three buildings had already been installed and turned on at the same time. The one that occupied the core function was a special, 3D projector. In an instant, 5 colored rays of light shot out, interweaving into countless layers of ever-changing structures. The complex array diagram that would normally take several hours to arrange was presented in the form of a projection. These scattered rays of light had all been specially processed to carry a certain amount of energy. If an ordinary person was exposed to this light, they would have been burned on the spot. However, under the control of the 3 first ablatums, not a single bit of the energy within the rays of light was wasted. They converged into the various basic structures of the array diagram and temporarily fused together with their respective auras. Every first ablatum seemed to be wrapped in a cocoon of light. Within the inner layer of the cocoon of light, the basic runes of the demonic curse were arranged in order to construct a single spiral chain-like structure. It revolved around the body and formed the inner ring of the foundation. On this foundation, countless arcs radiated outwards, intertwining with the multi-pointed stars on the outer layer. They cleverly pieced together to form several dozen relatively independent gear structures of different sizes. Bit by bit, they were like an enormous machine. It rumbled and hummed as it operated. The outermost spherical boundary was formed from several dozen to over 100 ring-shaped arrays. The dim and slightly gray light was like rapidly flowing muddy water. It swished as it flowed. It seemed as if it could break through the canal and overflow at any time. However, it also obtained a powerful tension from this. Just like this, the 3 roofs of the 3 buildings had nearly identical magic arrays. They formed an equilateral triangular structure with bright ends and shapeless edges. This structure had a name. It was the evolution field. It was jointly constructed by the 3 first ablatums. It was a wondrous land that they all shared. Of course, as the secret-bound first ablatum, Wang certainly had a higher level of authority. He also occupied a dominant position. In the center of the evolution field, the scales of truth that were in an unbalanced state were reflected. At this time, even though it had yet to reach the material plane, it had already entered the visual range of the surrounding believers. Immediately, these priests and members of the Order of Knights knelt down in accordance with the order's etiquette. More or less, their hearts of piety and reverence converged into the array diagram. They transformed into specific information and intersected with the energy, making it more active. The activated magic array was gradually gaining control over the surrounding area. The most direct change was the range of detection. None of the 3 first ablatums specialized in mental senses. They were separated by a kilometer in a straight line. If they wanted to understand the current situation of Frost River reality, they would need to use the words of Krite to form a snake nest or use a humanoid weapon like Baze as a fulcrum. But now, within the evolution field that the 3 of them shared, the information gathered by Frost River reality, no matter how numerous and complex it was and how thousands of strands it was sorted out and gathered within this triangular structure. In the end, it took shape and was projected into the souls of the 3 first ablatums. The image went from blurry to clear, covering an area of about 100 square meters, showing all the creatures in it. Moreover, under the effect of some special mechanism, the image was automatically focused, placing the most important person in the center and marking it. Although the location of the target wasn't much different. It was a child who appeared to be only 15 or 16 years old. He was dressed casually and looked like a student who came to Frost River reality to play on the weekends. Among the people who were traveling with him, any one of them was a member of society who was a lot older than him. But at this time, the group of people who were cautiously walking around unconsciously surrounded the young man in the center. 8 tall and sturdy special police officers wearing exoskeleton armors held guns and shields. They naturally formed a defensive formation. They looked like they were escorting a high-ranking official. Is that him? Xing Xiao and Qingli were a bit surprised. And Wang still did not speak. The information gathering and analysis of the evolution field did not stop here. Many special symbols and markings from within the order were sprinkled down. Everyone had a share. The parts that needed special attention were clearly marked in an eye-catching manner. The three first oblatums saw that those parts were astonishingly similar. They were exactly the same. They all appeared on everyone's chest. They all had the same form of existence and the same composition. Tetrahedron, inscribed sphere, circumscribed sphere. This is the archetype format. As a qualified clearsworn first oblatum, Qingli had an understanding of the extraordinary theories of the various powers. Naturally, he would not forget the archetype format theory that was currently the hottest topic in the world. Xing Xiao hesitated for a moment but still made a correction. The archetype format is the standard method of strengthening the fleshly body. The current situation should be the product of the mental interfering with the material plane. And Qingli choked and wanted to say more. But at this time, Wang finally clearly transmitted his thoughts. The words of Kreit's operation is obstructed. This young man is the direct cause. He is not old, but he already possesses considerable soul power. Moreover, the operation method is cautious. He naturally belongs to the side of order. Not too long ago, he received the blessing of Fairchild's Shield of Truth. Fairchild. Shield of Truth. Xing Xiao and Qingli were fiercely shocked. What relationship does he have with Fairchild? Who cares what relationship he has? And Wang's thoughts were still indifferent. Right now, we only need to know that Fairchild has blessed this young man. This young man's blessing is even more generous. Wherever he goes, the power of chaos and disorder will be restricted. Do you have any information on this young man? Of course, the Order had informants in the Ability User Society. They might not be able to touch upon some deep information, but they could always find basic information that was placed on the surface. It didn't take long for the three first oblatums to get to know this young man all over again. And Wang did not conceal his special attitude toward this young man at all. Luo Nan is a young man who has just joined the Order. A young man with boundless prospects. A young man without too much background. This is the power of talent. If we had met him a few years ago, we could have brought him into the Order and carefully trained him. Perhaps he could have contended for a holy disciple seed. Xing Xiao's heart stirred. And Qingli had contended for a holy disciple time and time again in the past. He was unsuccessful, so he sadly returned to Xia City and became the clearsworn first oblatum. He had always brooded over this. And Wang's words. Separated by several hundred meters of the night sky, he could not see Qingli's expression. But then Wang issued an order. Qingli. And Wang. The secular side is not the secular world. We set the rules for the secular world. Therefore, when we act, we need to find a reason. We also need to make our attitude clear. And Wang. Xing Xiao could hear an ominous taste in his words. He could not help but want to warn Wang. However, Qingli had already been struck to the core by a few words from his granduncle. He was put on the stage. He responded practically without thinking, "And Wang, please instruct me. We need to make it clear to the world that the Order is different from the scattered ability user society. We are also different from those politicians who believe in trickery. We have our principles. We absolutely will not compromise. Those who rashly interfere with the Order's internal affairs must pay the price. Right now, you are the judge. Make your verdict." For the fastest and most error-free novel reading, please visit Chapter 216. Ever since Luo Nan walked out of the room, he did not feel too good. After rendezvousing with Bai Xinyan, the route they were currently taking was precisely the area that the Order of Justice's firepower had recently passed through. As he walked through the empty amusement park, everything he saw was a mess. The ground was littered with helmets and equipment thrown down by the panic-stricken tourists. Occasionally, they would come across corpses that had been destroyed by the kinetic energy of the enormous bullets. The automatic sprinkler equipment above their heads had already been turned on. It was raining inside the amusement park. After the flesh and blood had been smeared on the ground, faint red blood flowed beneath their feet. This scene was hard to imagine for the people who had been stuck in the room. At the very least, Luo Nan never imagined that he would see Frost River reality like this. At this time, he had to constantly repeat those meaningless words, "Yes, don't worry. I'm fine. I'm really fine. I'm with the special police. I'm very safe. Don't worry." The person talking to him was none other than Mo Chio, whose legs had already turned to jelly. When Luo Nan led the special police back into Frost River reality, Mo Chio did not stop them. He was considering that Luo Nan was acquainted with the police officer. If Luo Nan could establish a good relationship with Luo Nan, it would be easier to plead for leniency for Mo Peng and the others. Who knew that a dozen or so minutes after entering the amusement park, news of a terrorist attack and the special police being knocked down would spread. Then came the sound of gunshots. All of Frost River reality was in an uproar. Mo Chio and the others were brought to the periphery by the chaotic flow of people. They wanted to contact Luo Nan, but no one picked up their calls. Mo Chio was so shocked that his soul left his body. Then he considered that if he were to continuously call Luo Nan under special circumstances, it might bring trouble to Luo Nan. He was in a dilemma, tormented to the point of insanity. Finally, Luo Nan noticed the missed call on his wristband while he was moving from the room. He dialed it, and Mo Chio's burning chest finally cooled down. Once a person's pressure was released, it was inevitable that they would chatter endlessly. Luo Nan patiently chatted with Mo Chio for a few rounds. From this, he gained some understanding of the situation outside. After the so-called terrorist attack, the police set up a blockade around Frost River reality and evacuated the surrounding citizens. Everyone believed that the police would quickly rush into Frost River reality to control the situation. But who would have thought that after gathering hundreds of people, the police were still hesitating at the periphery? They only sent some combat robots and unmanned aerial vehicles to enter. From time to time, they would rescue a few trapped citizens or carry them out. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Apart from a few corpses, there was no other movement, causing many people to be dissatisfied. Luo Nan nodded when he heard how the police handled the matter. Yes, this is correct. Frost River reality was currently enveloped by the power of the Order of Justice's words of Krite. Any living creature that entered would likely be reduced to a snake nest, becoming a helper for the Order of Justice. The police had obviously been instructed to do so. Mo Chio didn't understand. Nanster. Luo Nan had no way of explaining these things to Mo Chio. He just said, Mo Peng and the others have already been taken to the police station, right? That way they'll be safer. Third brother, Yuk, senior sister Xiaolin, senior sister Tian, and the others should quickly retreat. The further the better. I just heard from an insider that this group of terrorists might be carrying weapons of mass destruction. Ah! Don't speak carelessly like this. Xue Weiluan heard Luo Nan spouting nonsense and hurriedly stopped him. Luo Nan made an apologetic gesture to Xue Weiluan and continued to explain to Mo Chio, I'm following the special forces. I might evacuate in another direction. You guys don't need to worry about me. Just go as far as you can. Also, don't tell your family about this for now. Do you think that's possible? Mo Chio laughed bitterly in the end. Right now the cameras of the entire world are pointed at you guys. Luo Nan ended the call with Mo Chio. He could not help but imagine the rescue and corpses that Imochio spoke of. An indescribable feeling of discomfort assaulted him once more. He could not help but let out another sigh. Xue Weiluan saw that Luo Nan had ended the call and walked over to remind him a second time. Luo Nan, it's true that you are an expert, but your family members are not. Their endurance is different. You can't guarantee that they won't spread the news outside and be used by others. Luo Nan just wanted Imochio to take this seriously and quickly retreat. Comparing the words of Krite to a weapon of mass destruction was not too out of line. However, Xue Weiluan was an elder. Luo Nan obediently complied when he said this. Xue Weiluan had only said this out of professional habit. Actually, he had seen Luo Nan display the miraculous protective diagram technique and associated it with this young man's identity as an expert. It was inevitable that he would have some misgivings. Xue Weiluan saw that Luo Nan was still able to maintain the respectful attitude of a junior. His cultivation was extraordinary. Xue Weiluan's inherent impression of Luo Nan as a drug addict was immediately diluted. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Many people had a favorable impression of Luo Nan. Xue Weiluan did not want to leave behind any sort of stereotypical impression for his son's good friend. He just so happened to have some unresolved doubts, so he resolved them all at once. He reached out with his hand and drew 2 strokes on the half-covered, incorporeal diagram on his chest. Visible light waves rippled in the air. The diagram slightly warped and deformed before returning to normal. This diagram can defend against mental attacks, right? How long can it last? What's it called again? Format pyramid. Just call it that, uncle. Luo Nan laughed. It's a bit of an exaggeration to say that it can defend against mental attacks. It can only be said that it can avoid interference on the mental plane. If we encounter a direct attack, there will be a buffer to allow us time to react. Luo Nan looked at the chests of the group of people around him as he spoke. They were all supported by his format pyramid. Luo Nan felt a bit more at ease in his heart. His voice became a lot clearer. As for how long it can last. As long as I stand here, there won't be any problems. Student Luo Nan, are you sure that you are fine? Someone spoke before Luo Nan's words fell to the ground. The emphasis fell on the second you, implying something. The speaker was none other than Bai Xinyan. This medical doctor had been looking at her wristband with her head lowered the entire time ever since the group of people had followed their retreat route. It seemed that she was looking up information. She turned a blind eye to everything around her. Now that she had opened her mouth with great difficulty, it seemed like she was undermining Luo Nan. Ms. Bai. Luo Nan suddenly became speechless halfway through his words. This was because Bai Xinyan had moved a bit closer at this time. She extended her arm, half pressing and half hugging him. She wrapped her arm around his shoulder and walked forward just like that. Her posture was ambiguous, drawing the sidelong glances of many people to the side. Luo Nan clearly knew that Bai Xinyan didn't mean it that way. But when Bai Xinyan's arm wrapped around him, their bodies pressed together, and he felt the indescribable softness on his shoulder, his body unconsciously stiffened. Light touch is qualified. Ha! And then Bai Xinyan not only wrapped her arm around his shoulder, she even used her other hand to lightly pull his neck. She looked at the back of his ear and the side of his neck. The warmth of her fingertips seeped into Luo Nan's skin, and the throbbing of Luo Nan's blood vessels and nerves were fed back to her by her fingertips. There's only one update today. The next update is tomorrow morning at around 8 o'clock. Last month, I lost my moral standing. I suffered the wrath of heaven during the holidays. I'm working overtime and I'm stuck. Fat woman has a problem at work. It's a complete mess. I don't dare to say anything. I need to find my rhythm first. Chapter 2:17. Hey, are you going to take another bite next? Zhang Yingying couldn't help but shout. Bai Xinyan and Luo Nan were doing shady deals through Cat Eye's shared perspective. The members of the society in the encrypted channel could all see it clearly. In the end, Luo Nan was thin-skinned. He instinctively wanted to struggle when he heard this, but Bai Xinyan's finger on his neck suddenly felt warm and then cold. The speed of the change was so fast that Luo Nan might not have been able to tell if it wasn't for his training in the Frost River waterway and his sensitivity to heat and cold sensors. It was because he was able to tell clearly that the two completely opposite stimuli made him shiver uncontrollably. At this moment, the other hand that landed on his shoulder blade also began to exert force. It was fine at first. It was just a simple pressure. But later, even with the support of the Shield of Truth, Luo Nan felt his muscles, bones, and skin move under Bai Xinyan's fingertips. The pain assaulted him, and he couldn't help but frown. Ms. Bai. Hey! Luo Nan nearly jumped up in the next moment because Bai Xinyan's finger, which had been on his neck, suddenly slid down along his collar to touch his chest. Wow! A wave of exclamations filled the encrypted channel. The vigilant special police officers couldn't help but look over. Even though Bai Xinyan was a great beauty who could make one's heart beat faster, Luo Nan couldn't stand this routine. His right shoulder was pressed down, and his arm was powerless. He could only raise his left hand and firmly press down on Bai Xinyan's slender hand that had slid down to his chest through his clothes. But when he raised his arm and bent his elbow, the tip of his elbow collided with Bai Xinyan's body behind him. It seemed to have collided in the wrong place. Luo Nan's body froze again. And at this time, Bai Xinyan's laughing voice rang in his ear. Pressure, pain, and temperature are all fine. Nothing abnormal can be seen in your body. Your movements were automatic, and your sense of balance was very accurate. Not bad. As she spoke, Bai Xinyan pulled away from him as if nothing had happened. It was as if nothing had happened. Only now did Luo Nan realize that Bai Xinyan was doing a functional test on him. But what did she mean by doing this all of a sudden? I just looked up some information. Targets that receive the support of the Shield of Truth will have a substantial increase in defensive power. But if they endure it for a long time, they will often have problems afterward. This chapter is not complete. Please continue. Dislocation of muscles and bones, nerve damage, and other symptoms. Research believes that the power of the Shield of Truth, while supporting the structure of the human body, also creates distortions. Or perhaps, it numbs the senses of the person receiving the blessing, making it impossible for them to accurately grasp the limits of the body. But from what I can see so far, Student Luo Nan, you haven't shown any of these symptoms. Is Child's iron fist of love more exquisite? The encrypted channel was filled with, sounds of sudden realization, but how many of them could really listen to this explanation? Luo Nan recovered from his awkwardness, but he could not help but admire Bai Xinyan's judgment. It seemed to match the reality of the situation completely. The only thing she had overlooked was the effect Luo Nan himself had played in this blessing. Back when Fairchild punched Luo Nan, he injected the power of the mental and the material into Luo Nan's body, covering his entire body. This blessing was exquisite to the point of being inconceivable. It seemed to seep into every cell of Luo Nan's body. Under the infiltration of this heavy power, the millions and millions of basic units within Luo Nan's body were strengthened layer by layer. They were also slightly distorted and dislocated. It was the same as taking some of the powerful basic structures of the Shield of Truth and reflecting them into Luo Nan's body. This caused the endurance of Luo Nan's fleshly body to increase dramatically. Bai Xinyan's judgment up to this step was correct. It could be assumed that a normal target receiving the blessing would not be able to receive this preferential treatment on the cellular level. However, the reason why Fairchild's strength exertion was so exquisite and only strengthened on the basic level was to give Luo Nan room for further control. Any other person would be stupefied for a period of time when faced with the exquisite structure of the Shield of Truth. It was already quite good for Luo Nan to follow the rules and regulations. However, Luo Nan had just received Fairchild's demonstration not too long ago. He was not clear on the particularly subtle details, but he could not be clearer on the basic concepts. Therefore, when Luo Nan unleashed his soul strength, he very naturally and very boldly utilized these basic structures. He used his soul configuration as a reference and combined it with the My Heart's a Prison format formed from 5 years of taking medicine and visualizing. He underwent a second transformation, constructing a configuration outline that was more suitable for him. Luo Nan was still making fine adjustments to this configuration outline up until now, in order to seek a more harmonious and consistent state. Naturally, such precise operations would not cause the states shown in by Xinyan's data to appear. Only. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Unfortunately, this sort of adjustment was temporary. It was a temporary transformation under the blessing of the Shield of Truth. Once the effect wore off, it would return to its original state. This point was similar to what Bai Xinyan had said. Luo Nan already understood Bai Xinyan's intentions, but her method still made Luo Nan brood over it. The heat on his face had yet to completely fade. He spoke a bit louder in order to conceal it. I just said that there's no problem. I was the one who asked White Salt to confirm it. Mr. Luo, don't blame her. He Yueyin was the one who responded. Moreover, it was not in the encrypted channel. It was a direct sound wave transmission. Luo Nan was a bit stunned. He raised his head to look forward and saw He Yueyin, still dressed in her professional attire. She stood within the hazy mist that sprinkled down from the ceiling. She bowed slightly to him. Her body was still dry and cool under the cover of the mist. It was as if there was an incorporeal power isolating her from external contamination. However, when her gaze pierced through the mist and arrived at his side, Luo Nan clearly felt a thin layer of haze hidden within her originally clear and bright pupils. It was hard for Luo Nan to be angry at this female secretary who had always given him selfless assistance. He shook his head, but He Yueyin spoke before he could say anything. My next mission will be a bit more troublesome. If Mr. Luo can temporarily possess a stronger endurance after receiving the blessing of the Shield of Truth, he will be able to fully display his abilities. This will reduce the difficulty of the mission by quite a bit. Luo Nan's eyes lit up. He was just about to ask when Zhang Yingying was even more excited than him in the encrypted channel. Oh. Are you going to start scribbling? Wait a bit. I'll be right there. Hey, it looks like you didn't bring that black book. Do you want me to find a pen and paper, a flexible screen, or something? There's a supermarket right next to me. Leicester, go. See if there are any high-end brands. Take 2. Shuelei, who was traveling with her, was certainly embarrassed. It was quite a while before he faintly replied, Are you really going to take them? Luo Nan was also baffled. Zhang Yingying had an even more excited appearance than him. What the hell was going on? However, He Yueyin rejected Zhang Yingying's conjecture. No. What I need right now is Mr. Luo's all-encompassing perception and long-range strike abilities. Chapter 2:18. All-encompassing sensing. Kitty, someone is going to steal your job. Zhang Yingying chattered happily. Luo Nan participated in the society's operations with the identity of a scout. His identity was classified, so he did not reveal it to the public. However, it was impossible to be completely impenetrable within the society. At the very least, it was impossible to hide it from people like Zhang Yingying. She did not find it strange that Luo Nan possessed this ability. It was just that she did not directly expose his identity as a scout. But He Yueyin was the one who strongly advocated the secret setting of missions. She took the initiative to blur the boundary between Luo Nan and a scout. It was somewhat unusual. Zhang Yingying would not let this opportunity slip by. She immediately sent He Yuan a private message. "Hey, you knowingly break the law." This time, He Yuan did not respond at all. Luo Nan was a bit surprised, but he was more concerned about He Yuan's request. Speaking of which, ever since he met this secretary, this was the first time she had given him a mission so clearly instead of a protective restriction. It made him a bit eager. He Yuan spoke softly. "Bamboo Pole, report the situation at Frost River Reality." "Okay." Bamboo Pole responded lazily. "According to the secretary's request, I'll send everyone a picture." As they spoke, a fully labeled real-time dynamic map was released in the encrypted channel. It was a remodeled map of Frost River Reality's elevation structure. It was translucent and very clear. The secretary, Yingying, and student Shuelei have already cleaned up Frost River Reality. The military and police battle machines have already entered the scene. Most areas have been cleaned up, but there are still some areas that cannot be controlled. From the search of the surveillance system, there are still around 5 to 7 gunmen of the order. Most of them are concentrated at the junction of Area A and Area B, controlling the external passageways. At the same time, they are under the protection of bays and the other humanoid weapons. The red dot on the dynamic map is the one. Luo Nan looked very attentively. He took the initiative to ask, "How many are there like bays?" Cough. "Boss Luo, there is only one humanoid weapon like bays. If there were 2 more, you wouldn't have been able to leave the room alive." Bamboo Pole had to correct Luo Nan's misconceptions. However, there are slightly inferior humanoid weapons. They are the Ablatum Knights of the Knights of Equity. Xia City only has a small team. Including bays, there are a total of 9 people. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Since they were after Fairchild, they should all be here, or at least half of them. They should be near the area where Fairchild and bays were fighting. The problem is that even if these people didn't merge with the first Ablatum's power, they are still equivalent to C+ level ability users. Purely relying on the monitoring system, it is extremely difficult for us to detect their existence. In other words, you want me to find all these people? Luo Nan didn't feel that this mission was that difficult, but there was one thing he didn't understand. A C+ rank ability user. How powerful are they? Bamboo Pole found a reference for him. The secretary's entry assessment is C+, which is probably the highest level of an awakened. Luo Nan drew in a breath of cold air. He had seen He Yuan fight many times. That kind of swift and fierce rhythm made people feel that even if it was a thick steel wall, she could still cut through it with one slash. With He Yuan's strength, there were 8 or 9 of them at once. Of course, the highest level of the association's assessment can only be C+. I personally believe that the secretary's strength should be able to reach B+. Speaking of which, Boss Luo, your entry evaluation is only E+, which is a serious underestimation. Thanks. Luo Nan expressed his thanks to Bamboo Pole, but he still couldn't figure out how to calculate the strength of a C+ rank. Perhaps the only people who were more confused than him were Shua Weiluan and a few other special police officers outside the circle. Bamboo Pole simply switched to another reference. Then let's take Yingying for example. Her strength is only at C, but her white rainbow has an attack power that can reach the C+ level. Zhang Yingying's image flashed in Luo Nan's mind, and he let out a breath. That's good, you with the surname Luo, why don't you stick your dog head out and try? Zhang Yingying's furious voice came from far away. Her snow-white long legs swayed, stomping on the water as she came over. Her imposing manner was oppressive, causing the special police officers on guard to move out of the way one after another, making a path for her. Luo Nan went, Only Only then did he realize that his mouth had been a bit too fast. Though his impression of Zhang Yingying had always been complicated, she had given him a secret warning tonight. She had asked for pen and paper, and her attitude was extremely good. Those few words really weren't quite appropriate. Dad. Are you all right? Shuelei, who was following closely behind Zhang Yingying, was extremely excited to see his dad. He rushed forward, but in the blink of an eye, an armored fist smashed into his head. This chapter isn't finished. Please turn the page. His body immediately became shorter by half a length. Seeing his friend end up like this, Luo Nan was really worried that his head would be imitated by Zhang Yingying's white rainbow pierces the sun. He hurriedly raised his hand in apology. I'm sorry. Oh, Yingying, your white rainbow feels a lot sharper. Zhang Yingying sneered. It's too late to kiss ass now. Luo Nan spread his hands, feeling a bit helpless. The heavens took pity on him. He really was speaking the truth. When he looked over just now, he discovered that Zhang Yingying's cloud ribbons, which flowed endlessly on her body, had never been so clear and transparent since he met her. It was as if there really was a stream of flowing water winding around her body, reflecting a cold light. Because of this change, he nearly spilled the beans just now, exposing the fact that he could look directly at the white rainbow. He was able to guess that Zhang Yingying should have made a breakthrough in her abilities in the past week. That was why such an obvious change had appeared. She had just made some progress, but she was denied by a single sentence from him. Anyone would be anxious. Luckily, Shuelei couldn't stand his father's lecture at this time. He came over with a face full of dirt and grime to take refuge, indirectly covering for Luo Nan. He came up and gave Luo Nan a heavy hug. Nanster, thank you so much. I just heard my dad say that it's all thanks to you being there. Actually, Uncle has always been taking care of me. Luo Nan's attitude was naturally different towards this friend of the same age who got along well with him. He had experienced life and death together. He patted Shuelei's thick shoulders and sighed. Uncle was right. Leicester, you really shouldn't have charged in. How's senior sister Xiaolin? She's not from the same world. Shuelei took 2 steps back after the hug, revealing a depressed expression. These are her exact words. Sigh. Shuelei still wanted to say something, but he turned his head to look at the surrounding environment and the various people. In the end, he could only smile bitterly. No matter how he tried to argue, it all seemed pale and powerless in the face of ironclad proof. At this time, Bamboo Pole coughed a few times in the encrypted channel, asking for attention. Everyone, the small talk and such is enough. I haven't finished talking about the situation here. Red Fox, who was next to Bamboo Pole, came back to his senses at this time. Hey, what are you saying all this for? Do you really want to fight the secular side? Go through fire and water with Fairchild? Don't you see that there are plenty of routes to retreat from? Haven't you guys stayed long enough in that damned place? Chapter 219. The Red Fox fired off a barrage of questions. Bamboo Pole, who was beside him as the speaker, calmly explained to him, well, it's not that we're helping Child. You see, there are currently nearly 100 innocent citizens trapped in Frost River reality. All of them are in Area A of the first level, and they are divided into nearly 20 gathering points. Each gathering point has anywhere from 2 to 7 people. Luo Nan was listening attentively when Zhang Yingying unforgivingly came over. Bai Xinyan, who was next to Luo Nan, held Zhang Yingying's shoulder to no avail. Hey, you said that you feel sharper. Is that true? Really? Luo Nan's reply was resolute and decisive. Empty words. Who would believe you? Here, draw me another portrait. Ha! Luo Nan wasn't able to react for a time. Zhang Yingying had already stuffed a thin leather notebook into his hand. She stabbed a pencil into his hand in passing. She was very considerate and sharpened it, but it nearly pierced his palm. In this kind of amusement park, it was really difficult to find something like a paper notebook. What Zhang Yingying gave him should be some kind of game accessory. The outer and inner layers were all gaudy. Luo Nan was a bit speechless for a time. His sketchy style was actually able to garner fans. Moreover, it was a strange woman like Zhang Yingying. Bai Xinyan was also curious. Do you like his paintings? Zhang Yingying was all smiles. Her anger could no longer be seen. Shamans can go back in time and foresee things. They can see things that others haven't seen. The boss said that my current perception of the white rainbow is too subjective and requires multiple references. His painting is simple and straightforward, and it saves me the most effort. Luo Nan could only laugh bitterly at this reason. He casually flipped open the book, but then he raised his head to look at the ceiling. Mist was sprinkling down from there. The mist had long since soaked Luo Nan's hair. Now that the mist had sprinkled onto the book, a patch soon split open. Zhang Yingying rolled her eyes and didn't make things difficult for him. After this, you have to give it to me tomorrow. Do you have mine? Bai Xinyan joined in the fun. From beginning to end, Luo Nan still held a bit of vigilance against this person. He could only lower his head and smile, putting on an introverted and shy appearance. However, his attention was quickly drawn to Bamboo Pole's explanation. The existence of nearly 100 citizens is a headache. Currently, the Knights of Equity have no plans to capture any hostages. However, they are not prepared to let anyone out either. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Bamboo Pole then played a video, which showed that the gunmen were guarding the exit. As long as a citizen tried to escape, they would shoot through their legs with light weapons, leaving them to scream and groan. It was a very cruel scene. At the side, Shuelei hissed. He was very uncomfortable with this scene and couldn't help but mutter, "Isn't this a hostage? They're just building a snake nest." Bamboo Pole adjusted the screen so that everyone could see what was going on. Those who tried to escape, after their legs were pierced, became the best carrier for the words of Krite. The pain they suffered increased by several times, but they couldn't even faint. They could only struggle and scream, letting the invisible viper slither in and out. Soon, they were on the verge of death. The screams and struggles were also releasing a huge amount of negative psychic waves, affecting the trapped people who were not injured but were dominated by fear and panic, causing them to spread to the snake nest. The more densely packed the snake nests are, the more the Order of Justice's first ablatum can display their abilities to the fullest. The distance restrictions they face are also smaller. According to past intelligence, if you want a humanoid weapon like Bai's to operate at full power, 3 snake nests around him is the standard. If you want to add other ablatum knights, it would at least double the number. Speaking of which, it was a very correct choice for you to bring that rich second generation over. Boss Luo's format pyramid is also very powerful. Bamboo Pole was referring to Huang Bingjin, who had fallen back into a coma. Luo Nan had added the format pyramid to Huang Bingjin's body, suppressing the effects of the snake nests. Luo Nan received praise, but he didn't feel any joy. Shuelei couldn't bear to watch the cruel scene of mental torture on the monitor screen. Luo Nan was the same. Plus, this sort of scene triggered the bad feeling he had before. It made him feel uncomfortable from the inside out. Red Fox ridiculed at this time, so the play has changed. It has changed to a world-shaking rescue. I say, is childishness contagious? One devilish brat is enough. Luo Nan felt bad. He had been inexplicably implicated. His heart was even more vexed. He took a deep breath and suppressed the pain in his finger. It turned out that he had unconsciously exerted strength in his hand. In the end, he broke the tip of the pencil, and the sharp point pierced into his finger. At this time, Zhang Yingying spoke in the encrypted channel. Hey, Fox. Enough of your squeaking. The order of justice wouldn't scare you to this extent. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. They were originally on the same side. Who would have thought that Zhang Yingying would go back on her word? And so would Bamboo Pole. Red Fox was already in a bad mood. Now that he was angry, he spoke without restraint. I'm sorry, but I really wasn't scared by the order of justice. I was scared by my pig-headed teammates. The order of justice does things without the slightest scruple. They are one of the big three. If they can do something, they can handle it. No one can do anything to them. But the devilish brat is different. He doesn't even know the basics of choosing a battlefield. He wants to play with a big scene. What human-faced arachnid, Fairchild, words of Krite. His tempo is flying. You guys aren't afraid of getting your faces blown up when playing with explosives, but I'm afraid of getting shit blown up. Look at these innocent civilians. Didn't they get hit by the explosion? Zhang Yingying flew into a rage. Fox, don't go too far. Red Fox's words were far too incisive. Luo Nan really did forget to breathe for an instant. He just instinctively pulled out the tip of the pencil from his finger, letting it fall into the shallow water on the ground. His exquisite perception inexplicably locked onto the entire process of this tiny object's fall. This included its flip, its entry into the water, and the tiny ripples it created. Luo Nan used this method to distract his mind and enjoy a moment of tranquility. But by the time his attention returned, the boiling heat in his chest became more and more unbearable. He wanted to follow this burning emotion and argue loudly. He wanted to denounce Red Fox's stubborn and unreasonable attitude. But in the end, he did not say a single word. He just lowered his eyebrows and retracted his eyes. He carefully limited the range of his mental senses to a range of 10 meters. Layer by layer, he expanded outwards. 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters. Soon, the range of his mental senses surpassed cat eyes. It continued to expand outwards. As the range of his mental senses rapidly expanded, the flow of information pouring in from the outside increased exponentially. The feedback of this information was not like the simple soul configuration, which could realize the convenient conversion of energy and information. The information had to follow the functional mechanism of the human nervous system and pass through specific neurotransmitters and various other forms of stimulation. The information had to be transmitted in an orderly manner, advancing layer by layer. Only then could the information finally fuse into the center of the brain and form a complete picture of all-encompassing perception. During this process, the structure of the human body would inevitably undergo an absolute test. In a few breaths of time, all sorts of detailed information about the environment of Area A of Frost River reality rushed toward Luo Nan like a rising tide. There was a loud rumble. Chapter 220. At this moment, it was as if Luo Nan had been struck by an enormous wave. His ears rang in an instant, his eyes were dazzled, and even his skin was a bit numb. However, his endurance was different from before. His mental plane was stable from beginning to end. As the subsequent impact of the flow of information ebbed, the stimuli of light, color, sound, and even hot, cold, and painful sensations were sorted out. The external scene gradually grew clearer and brighter. In the next few seconds, Luo Nan finally had the spare energy to take a deep breath. He divided a strand of his mind and compared it to the structural diagram of Frost River reality given by Bamboo Pole. He sorted out the location of his own sensing area. It was not easy to do this amidst the chaotic flow of information. In his daze, he heard Shuelei curse, "What kind of person is this?" and he also heard Red Fox's sneer in the encrypted channel. "I'm going too far. Secretary, you dared to pat your chest and say that you didn't have the intention to wipe your boss's face but in such a hilarious rescue mission. Luo Nan did not raise his eyelids. He did not care whether or not He Yuan would respond or not. He just focused on sorting out the sensing information according to his established train of thought. Red Fox's voice completely faded away when Luo Nan's mental plane was touched in many places. The corresponding information refreshed in succession. He immediately used the private chat function of the encrypted channel to send a message to Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work. There was no immediate response. A full 5 seconds passed before Bamboo Pole replied with a sluggish emoticon. Luo Nan let out a long breath after doing this. He suddenly felt pain on his back. It was Zhang Yingying slapping him on the back. She shouted, "Get your spirits up." Then she cursed back at Fox. "According to your logic, you're blabbering here to clean up the mess of the Order of Justice. So it turns out that the people they sent, the reserved area, and the guns were all forced by Luo Nan. Hee, these words sound quite familiar to me. Back then, you ran out of Hu City like a stray dog. You seem to be wearing this hat. Back then, you didn't even dare to fart. Now that you have the chance, why don't you seize the moment and throw this smelly thing at someone else?" At the support point, the Red Fox was infuriated after being exposed by Zhang Yingying. He had committed the most basic of mistakes. He immediately opened his mouth and roared into the channel, "It's easy for you to talk. Why are you playing with double standards? Do you want to F*King bet on what kind of faces those people from headquarters will have? Maybe we don't need to go too far. Let's watch the news tomorrow. What kind of attitude will Xia City's government and the military have? Bet that you'll run away again." Zhang Yingying spat, "If you have the guts, go yell at headquarters and the government of Xia City. When the courageous are enraged, they draw their swords towards those stronger than them. When the cowardly are enraged, they draw their swords towards those weaker than them. Have you ever learned this in elementary school? If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. If not, I'll teach you for free." Yingying. Probably feeling that the team's atmosphere was on the verge of collapse, He Yuan finally opened her mouth, stopping Zhang Yingying from continuing. But now, Zhang Yingying was also furious. If she didn't like it, she wanted to stab him back. "I'm sorry, we don't know each other that well. Don't call me that intimately. I don't want to say it a third time." "Oh right, Secretary she asked you to pat your chest. Don't back down just because you don't have the capital to back down." The conversation between the two of them didn't need to be transmitted through the encrypted channel. This kind of face-to-face situation was much more direct than in the channel. For a moment, everyone raised their eyebrows. Under everyone's gazes, He Yuan's face was devoid of joy or anger. She replied calmly, "I want to correct a mistake of yours. Mr. Luo isn't weak. The things he can do are much more than what you're arguing with your mouths. Right now, the intelligence information has been adjusted. Please receive it carefully, everyone. Hey! Ha!" Zhang Yingying and Red Fox used emotionless tones to respond to He Yuan's forceful change of topic. The only thing they had in common was dissatisfaction. However, He Yuan's words, "Mr. Luo," shifted the focus onto Luo Nan. So much so that Bamboo Pole coughed a few times in an attempt to rouse everyone's attention, but it was to no avail. He could only helplessly play the picture. "Fine. You guys should see for yourselves. I'll just mention one thing. The previous data is for reference only. From now on, all intelligence updates regarding the interior of Frost River reality will be based on the new picture." As he spoke, 2 moving pictures that looked almost identical simultaneously appeared in the encrypted channel. One was labeled old, and the other was labeled new. The two pictures were similarly concise and clear. The distribution of the red dots representing the enemy and the green dots representing the trapped citizens looked roughly similar. However, upon closer inspection, one would discover that the number of red and green dots in the old and new pictures did not match. The new picture had at least 10% more dots. This was the scale of over a dozen people. The vast majority of these 10% were red dots representing the enemy. You've changed the monitoring method. Cat Eyes spoke with her unique sharp voice. These extra ones are all Ablatum Knights. Over at the support point, Bamboo Pole shot a glance at Red Fox, who still had a sneer on his face. He sighed, "Don't ask me. This has nothing to do with me." His words were unclear, but it was this vague response. This chapter has yet to end. Please turn the page. This was tantamount to giving the others the clearest direction. After all, Yuan had long since mentioned the matter of the all-encompassing perception. She had also used the excuse of correcting mistakes just now. "You're joking." Red Fox wanted to maintain his cold and cynical attitude, but Bamboo Pole just spread his hands. Cat Eyes did not make a sound. She seemed to have sunk into deep thought. The sneer on Red Fox's face stiffened bit by bit. Then he seemed to have sobered up a bit. A twitching struggle appeared on his face. But before he could open his mouth again, Zhang Yingying let out an aha from over at Frost River Reality. She grinned and gave Luo Nen a heavy slap on the back. "Well done. A man of action triumphs over a cannon of words. A certain person's thousands of crooked words can't compare to doing a single thing in a down-to-earth manner. But you really are stealing Kitty's rice bowl, hey?" Zhang Yingying felt that she had spoken indiscreetly when she said these words. She hastily shut her mouth. Cat Eyes, who was by Luo Nan's side, woke up from her deep contemplation. She turned her head slightly and the radiance between the slits of her eyes was like a blade that had just been tempered with fire. It cut across Luo Nan's face. Even though Cat Eyes had long since regarded this fellow as a hidden boss, the ability that Luo Nan displayed in the domain she was most proficient in at this moment was an intense stimulation to her heart. All-encompassing suppression. This wasn't even the slightest bit funny. Cat Eyes stared fixedly at Luo Nan, attempting to see through Luo Nan's essence. But it was just like her previous experience of failure. She did not gain anything substantial. In the end, she could only resort to words. "Let's not talk about anything else. This place. Are you sure there's someone here? How did you do it?" Cat Eyes was pointing at a certain location on the periphery of Area A's arena plate. A certain red dot was marked extremely clearly on the new map. But there was no trace of it on the old map. This area was at the edge of Cat Eyes' long-range perception range. She should have been able to sense it, but in reality, she was unable to sense the existence of the other party. Red Fox suddenly had a point to vent his anger. He was unable to care too much. He chased after the end of Cat Eyes' words and spoke in a hoarse voice. "Kitty is right. Are you sure there's someone here? Can you guarantee that it's accurate and not just a random?" "You shut up. Did you spit out your brain from your cannon of words?" Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying spoke at nearly the same time. The length of their words were different and their emotions were different. However, they made Red Fox choke on the spot. From Red Fox's perspective, at this very moment, be it Frost River Reality, the support point, or the virtual encrypted channel, all of them had sunk into a suffocating silence. Chapter 221. After venting her anger, Cat Eyes returned to silence. She seemed to be at a loss as to which side she should stand on. Luckily, Zhang Yingying stole the show once again at this time. She laughed and rubbed Luo Nan's back to soothe him. She even used her height advantage to pat his head and give him a good compliment. Luo Nan slapped her away in a bad mood. Zhang Yingying was not angry. On the contrary, she was very excited. She was the one who recommended Luo Nan into the society. Any of Luo Nan's achievements added luster to her face. At least she believed so. She didn't doubt the correctness of Luo Nan's answer. It had nothing to do with his ability. It just stemmed from her trust in this young and inexperienced high school student's personality. Hey, let's get to the bottom of this. Tell me, why didn't Kitten see it, but you did? Luo Nan thought for a bit and finally spoke. There's a corpse over there. Zhang Yingying was a little stunned. She wasn't the only one. There were very few people around who understood what was going on. Zhang Yingying tried her best to understand and tried to answer. You are saying that the Oblatum Knight over there disguised himself as a corpse, so Bamboo Pole and Kitten escaped. Luo Nan nodded. This is too. Zhang Yingying was simply speechless. Though Luo Nan was able to see a corpse 50 meters away in such a complicated environment was already quite amazing, what kind of lousy reason was this? Could this be the legendary 1,000 gold formula of the Jianghu? She had no intention of refuting Luo Nan, but she could not help but seek confirmation from Cat Eyes. Is this the case? Hello, Kitty. Cat Eyes only reacted when she heard the second voice. She forced herself to reply, there is indeed a corpse there. She was in low spirits and no longer doubted him. Through the encrypted channel, Bamboo Pole sent over a video feed of the surveillance system. Indeed, there was a corpse there. It was quite fat, and it was a common overweight person in the city. It looked like it had been hit by a bullet. It was lying on the ground, motionless, and there was a large pool of blood under its body. Judging from the amount of blood loss, the chances of survival were slim. Anyone who saw the video couldn't help but be speechless. No matter how he looked at it, it was still a corpse. There were no signs that it was an Oblatum Knight in disguise. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. In the encrypted channel, the Red Fox's hoarse and trembling laughter rang out. You say that this fatty is an Oblatum Knight. Excellent. Those who have seen the information on the Order of Justice, raise your hands. Which of the 9 Oblatum Knights of Xia City has such an appearance? For a moment, no one responded. The Red Fox's voice suddenly became louder. Or does Boss Luo believe that we should never let our guard down against any humanoid object? Then according to your logic, all the corpses in Frost River reality have the possibility of being Oblatum Knights. Who will verify this? Just based on those spots of light. What a joke. Towards the end, the Red Fox's throat was already torn. He had always believed that his words and actions were not wrong. Now, he was even more certain of this. The reason why Luo Nan encountered such an awkward situation was ultimately due to the Holy Mother surrounding the immature Luo Nan. There was no objectivity to speak of in their protective attitudes. More than once, he had the urge to turn around and leave this goddamn operation team so that he wouldn't be labeled as a coward. However, from Hu City to Xia City, he had accumulated many years of viciousness and depression. It was not so easy to vent it. With this anger, even if his head was broken and he bled, he would still argue this matter clearly. Bamboo Pole looked at Red Fox's expression and felt bad for him. He wanted to mediate the situation, so he reached out a hand and pressed down on Red Fox's shoulder. Fox, listen to me. Including you. Red Fox forcefully pushed Bamboo Pole's hand away. His bloodshot eyes glared fiercely at Bamboo Pole. Is your brain full of shit? You let a little kid say whatever he wants to say. You don't care about right or wrong at all. You just applaud a post-processing GIF. Bamboo Pole sighed again and spread his hands. Fox, you need to calm down and think. Cold my ass. Red Fox gave Bamboo Pole a thumbs up, pointing downwards. Then he took a deep breath and grabbed his lapels with both hands. He shook the red jacket that represented his honor and reputation. He grinned and laughed once more. How about this? If you guys aren't doing it, then I'll do it. We'll make this bet. We'll bet on the Oblatum night. Bamboo Pole was startled. He suddenly realized what Red Fox meant. He reached out to grab him, but as a non-combatant, how could he compare to Red Fox, who had the reputation of being the city hunter? He reached out to grab empty air. Stop him, Bamboo Pole called out to Papercut. However, Papercut was also a mentally enhanced person. He wasn't any better than Bamboo Pole. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Red Fox's figure flashed a few times and he left the shopping center that served as the meeting point. He blended into the bustling street's surging stream of people. By the time Bamboo Pole and Papercut rushed out, their line of sight had already been blurred by the curtain of rain. How could they see Red Fox's shadow? Didn't you guys say that I only knew how to shoot my mouth off? I'll show you right now. Red Fox's lips curled into a cold smile. He walked toward the most chaotic area of the city center tonight with large strides. Red Fox, don't do meaningless things. You can't be reasonable, so you want to throw a tantrum. 2 messages consecutively appeared in the encrypted channel. The first was He Yuan's words and the second was naturally Zhang Yingying's. These 2 words were spoken at nearly the same time. Immediately, He Yuan's unprecedentedly stern gaze pierced over. Even with Zhang Yingying's usual lively temperament, she instantly choked. Just as Zhang Yingying was about to counterattack, Bai Xinyan moved closer to her ear and said, "Hey, you can't force people to extremes." Zhang Yingying opened her mouth but no sound came out. She had been reminded by Bai Xinyan. She discovered that Red Fox's state wasn't too normal. It was to the extent that he seemed to be smashing a broken jar. Was this necessary? At this moment, Red Fox's hoarse voice entered the encrypted channel. Then explain it clearly, Miss Secretary. Explain it clearly to me. What is the meaning? What is the meaning of this damned night? Red Fox continued to use the low-level error method to communicate. He simply didn't care about the strange gazes cast by the people around him. After he cursed loudly, he laughed at himself in a hoarse voice. Since there is no meaning, it doesn't matter what I do. As his voice fell, his footsteps sped up a bit. The support point was actually closer to Frost River reality than the Yulon Hotel. He secretly exerted strength in his legs. As he spoke, he saw the triangular flying ship surrounded by spotlights and police lights in the distance. In front of him was a stream of people retreating from Frost River reality. Their footsteps were either fast or slow. Their expressions alternated between fear, panic, excitement, and curiosity. Red Fox did not dodge or evade. He charged into the stream of people. His hands were in his pockets. He used the most relaxed method to advance against the flow of people. His arms and shoulders brushed against each other several times, but they did not affect him in the slightest. Aha! It was a very familiar feeling. These ignorant faces were no different from those in whose city. Chapter 222. The cold smile on Red Fox's lips seemed to have been carved by a knife. This was also the curve he was used to. Layers upon layers of absurd déjà vu assaulted him, causing his memories to stir. It seemed as though a long time ago, it was also a city like this, a night like this, a stream of people like this, and himself like this. However, there was no triangular spaceship in front of him. There was only a target that was desperately hiding his aura and fleeing in panic. Oh, I remember now. What a perfect operation. A group of friends and colleagues who were as outstanding as him had used 10 days and nights to lay out the plan. They had executed every step perfectly and he, the urban hunter, had delivered the final blow. In the most bustling city area, not a single innocent citizen had been harmed. He had calmly killed the target, the so-called fanatic who had tortured and murdered women and children as sacrifices to the evil god in the name of preaching. Filthy blood had splashed onto his jacket, but it was like a wantonly spilling of champagne. At that moment, all the participants had cheered excitedly. Most of them were young people who had just passed the society's entrance assessment. There were very few awakened ones among them. However, they had used a strict plan and a high level of execution to grind down the target's capital layer by layer. They had created various favorable situations and finally, they had perfectly killed the fanatic with B-rank strength. And then? What happened next? The church had unscrupulously wreaked havoc in Huqing. The list of participants had been leaked and they had singled out names to kill. In a few short days, more than half of the young people who had participated in the operation had died. What had the society done during this period of time? The headquarters had given them an evaluation and reprimand that they had acted without regard for the consequences. The branch had given them a safe haven ticket that was equivalent to an expulsion order. Their former comrades and good friends had gone on a closed-door training trip. Those who had luckily survived had run out of Huqing like dogs. They had hidden in the wilderness and scattered in all directions. Now that they had contacted him, there was a 90% chance that they would not respond. They did not know where they were and whether they were alive or dead. This was the F*King ending. The stream of people parted in front of Red Fox. Countless blurry faces that seemed familiar flowed past his shoulders. His mood had inexplicably entered a wondrous state of tranquility. He could even crack a joke. Distance to the target is 856 meters. Estimated time of arrival is 90 seconds. Everyone can raise the stakes. However, if anyone dares to touch my gambling equipment, I will fight them. The encrypted channel was silent. It was just like the night before he had fled Huqing. The corners of the Red Fox's lips twitched. In the end, these remaining memories were sealed in that cold and mocking smile. At this moment, Red Fox had already arrived at the outskirts of Frost River reality. There was still a large crowd of onlookers here. As the police cordon expanded outwards, they reluctantly retreated backwards. Among them were some media reports that were unable to occupy a good position. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The personnel were trying to squeeze a path against the flow to get closer to the scene. As for the three surrounding buildings, the flashing lights were like twinkling stars. Occasionally, they would synchronize and illuminate the entire area in a deathly white. It was a perfect graveyard. Just as the Red Fox was about to cut into the crowd, a new message slid into the encrypted channel. It was still from He Yuan. Our attention shouldn't be on a corpse. The Red Fox was startled when he heard what was said. His brain spun a few rounds before he finally let out a laugh. I knew it, I knew it. To hell with Ablatum Night, to hell with broken corpses. This is simply the biggest rubbish joke. Hey! Within Frost River reality, Zhang Yingying's eyes were wide open. She raised a finger and pointed at He Yuan. She wanted to berate her with a few words but her gaze unconsciously turned to Luo Nan. Luo Nan's eyes were still drooping as he stood solemnly and silently. He did not have the calmness of having the pearl of wisdom in his hands, nor did he have the panic of having his scam seen through. Red Fox laughed in a low voice. Miss Secretary, are you saying that you want to fold up and admit defeat? Have you asked for the boss' opinion before saying these words? Mr. Luo, Boss Luo, won't you say a few words? It was as if Luo Nan did not hear anything. He did not respond at all. Zhang Yingying could not hold it in any longer but by Xinyan hugged her neck. Her actions were intimate and she did not allow Zhang Yingying to say anything. Red Fox did not receive a response. His smile grew even wider but his voice became even more hoarse. Good. Very good. Your ability to wipe your face and butt is truly amazing. Is there any meaning in doing this? Is it to forcefully slap my face? Or is it to let this scammer off the hook? He Yuan spoke calmly. Isn't this what you want? Red Fox was simply speechless. Are you trying to be funny? He Yuan sighed imperceptibly. This has nothing to do with being funny. I am just trying to bring your attention back to a more practical level. For example, your mistakes, your logical errors. You are unreasonable. At this moment, Red Fox simply had the urge to smash the hex's ear. But then, a familiar voice resounded in his ears. If we really do discuss this matter with the order of justice in the future, what will we be? The first wave of cannon fodder? Or will we be used as scapegoats? It's you who hasn't seen headquarters morality. The matter has already blown up. These secret orders are the best at dealing with matters of faith. They are making a mountain out of a molehill. Headquarters, on the other hand, is politically correct from start to finish. Red Fox finally realized that this was his voice. It was his original words, just slightly edited. The original meaning had not changed. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. He could only sneer at this. What? You want to report this to headquarters? Go ahead. I was harmed once in the past. I have experience. It doesn't matter if I do it a few more times. He Yuan still took out the edited version she had made at the last minute. The next part of the speech was even closer. It was also the beginning of Red Fox's falling out with everyone. What human-faced arachnid, Fairchild, words of Krite. The tempo is flying. You guys aren't afraid of getting your faces blown up when you play with him. I'm afraid of getting shit blown up. Look at these innocent citizens. Didn't they get blown up? The Red Fox was preparing for her next counterattack, but when these words suddenly entered her ears, her blood suddenly surged and her face flushed. As the sound waves shook her eardrums, the mocking and sharp tone was like a knife that pressed into the tip of her heart, grinding back and forth. He was in pain and annoyance. He opened his mouth, wanting to speak, but his throat was inexplicably filled with the echoes of blown up, blown up. It was so solid that he could not spit out half a word. Only now did He Yuan's voice enter his ears. My code name is Secretary, but Luo Nan is not my boss. None of the people here have known him for more than 2 weeks. Luo Nan is a rookie who just entered the society. Whether it is in the mortal world or the inner world, his life experience can be said to be lacking. The chances of him making mistakes and stirring up trouble far surpass the rest of us, especially since he has the ability to make a big deal out of it. But me, Ying, bamboo pole. Many of us are leaning towards him, protecting him, and helping him. Isn't this good? He isn't cannon fodder. He doesn't need to be a scapegoat. He doesn't need to be politically correct. Aren't you satisfied with this kind of result in this loose society? Aren't you looking forward to it? Especially after you came out from Whose City. Don't you *King feed me chicken soup? The word Whose City was like a brand that was about to melt. It was forcefully stabbed into Red Fox's chest, making him unable to restrain himself from howling in pain. What kind of society is this? At best, you're a death list. You list them one by one, then you cross them off one by one. Cross them off. You guys. Oh. Does the list you're talking about include me? The voice suddenly rang out behind his head, shocking him to the point that his scalp was about to explode. Even though Red Fox's emotions were at their most intense, his instinct still helped him turn his body and pull apart some distance. Only then did he turn his head. But he was stupefied on the spot in the next moment. A meager middle-aged man wore a well-ironed formal attire that would only appear at formal banquets. He wore a bow tie around his neck as he stood amidst the chaotic stream of people. The man smiled at Red Fox. The corners of his eyes, which were half covered by his retro glasses, rippled with light fine lines due to his smile. Chapter 223. Good evening, Fox. Good evening. Red Fox responded instinctively. In reality, he was sluggish for a full 5 seconds before he managed to regain his wits. He bowed again. President, you are here. The middle-aged man behind him was the president of the Wilderness Explorers Society's Xiao City branch. He was the nominal leader of all ability users in the city, Ouyang-chin. There was practically no one in Xiao City who did not know of the president, who was known as the gentleman of the laboratory. If one wanted to find the president, one had to knock on the door of the laboratory on the 13th floor of the Shangding Triplex building. Especially after the Hexier came out and the gradual perfection of the psychic wave network, Ouyang-chin took on the roles of chief engineer, operating officer, and administrator. He spent all day adjusting the network, solving bugs, or carrying out service refinement and in-depth research. Many people suspected that their president Ouyang would not take a single step out of the building for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The formal attire he wore had not changed for many years only because he appeared in public at a pitifully small number of formal meetings. It was because Red Fox knew of these things that he felt as if he had fallen into a dream when he saw Ouyang-chin appear outside Frost River reality. His mind was in chaos. Also, what did the president's first words mean? Ouyang-chin smiled as if he was just passing by. He waved his hand at Red Fox. You guys talk. I interrupted midway. Sorry for being rude. When Red Fox heard this, he immediately looked at the encrypted channel. However, there was no eye-catching administrator symbol. Ouyang-chin was not in the encrypted channel. But looking at it from another perspective, the entire psychic wave network was set up by Ouyang-chin. He had the authority to supervise all official actions coordinated by the society. It was normal for him to see their argument. Did he see everything that was said just now? Red Fox was a bit absent-minded, but he could feel that Ouyang-chin's arrival had miraculously lowered his burning emotions. All that was left was a slight warmth in the pit of his heart. Yuan's voice continued to come from the Hexier. I don't want to give you the impression that I'm expressing my emotions. I only wish to state the facts for you. Every metropolitan area in the world is nominally under the rule of the United Government. In reality, they are in a semi-independent state. The ecology of every city is different. The secular world is like this. The inner world is the same. There is no true unified order and logic. I don't like this situation. But it has resulted in this fact. Regardless of headquarters' conclusion, no matter what your results are in whose city, it is meaningless to transplant you to Xiao City. Red Fox Heart. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. His mind was erratic, and most of the words went in one ear and out the other. But he noticed something. From the moment Ouyang-chin appeared until now, even if he did not enter the encrypted channel, his reaction was still very intense. However, there was no news from Frost River reality at all. There was no doubt, no surprise, no greeting, nothing at all. It seemed that Yuan and the others were completely unaware of Ouyang-chin's arrival. Or perhaps, this President Ouyang only existed in his own world. Could it really be an illusion? The Red Fox's consciousness became even more absent-minded. He could not help but turn his head to look at Ouyang-chin. The president was so clear and honest. He even raised his hand to signal for him to listen carefully. Right at this moment, a few highly sensitive words pierced his eardrums from Yuan's side. I don't know what the death list is, but I believe that an awakened's core self-logic shouldn't be distorted by external threats. President Ouyang, who proposed the theory of the 3 levels of logic, was right beside him. The red fox naturally knew the meaning of self-logic. That was what an ability user used to influence the outside world, to truly unleash their own power. Distortion. That was not a good word at all. First, he was slapped in the face by his own words. Then, he was frightened by Yang. The current red fox did not have the mood to be entangled. He just sneered and prepared to inform the other side of Yang's arrival. Aren't the surrounding people stupid? Yang suddenly asked. Ha! The red fox heard this and subconsciously turned his head to look all around. He observed the bustling stream of people coming and going, but he did not know how to answer. Yang extended his right hand and gently swung his arm. It was as if he was tapping a beat. He drew a triangle in the air and suddenly changed the topic. The 3 first oblatums of the Order of Justice are standing in a triangle. The evolution field covers them and acts as a prelude to the curse. One of them is a secret-bound first oblatum and 2 clear-sworn first oblatums. Their strength is at most B+, C+, and C+. According to the evolution incantation theory, their actual range of control is a vast area with the center of the triangle as the center. The radius is 2 times the longest midline. Red Fox felt like an idiot. He could not keep up with Yang's train of thought. If we convert the range, then this means that these 3 buildings, Frost River Reality, and the 2 neighboring blocks are all within the range of the curse. Everyone who is watching and those in the neighboring blocks are actually in danger of losing their lives. Yet, they are still here. Aren't they stupid? Yang was very serious. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. The smile on his face was no longer there. Behind the retro glasses, his eyes were calm and clear. This was the usual appearance of the gentleman of the laboratory. Red Fox was more familiar with this, but he was also more nervous. He hesitated for a moment before answering, because they are completely ignorant of the danger. More or less, but it's not enough. Yang extended his hand and pointed outwards. It was as if he was stirring the surface of the water. His finger streaked across the surging stream of people. Fine ripples spread out. Red Fox's eyes suddenly widened. At this moment, he finally discovered the strangeness of the surrounding crowd. No, it was the problem between him and Yang. The 2 of them were clearly standing in the stream of people, but everyone was ignoring them. Even if everyone's attention was focused on the area around Frost River Reality, it was inevitable that they would bump into each other in the crowded stream of people. However, the current situation was that no one was making contact with the 2 of them. They passed by their sides, in the middle, and even passed through their bodies. The 2 of them seemed to have transformed into formless ghosts. Their bodies were in the real world, coexisting with the surrounding stream of people. Yet, there was an insurmountable distance between them. And on the other side of the encrypted channel, Red Fox clearly saw that the timer in the corner of the interface had actually stopped. This is true projection, spatial fault, whatever you want to call it. However, I'm more used to calling it the logic world. Yang extended his hand and pointed at his temple. He added, it's a world that I interpret using my logic. Was this the power of an extraordinary? In the face of such an inconceivable method, Red Fox completely lost the courage to think. He could only bow his head and admit defeat. President, please give us a clear explanation. Yang did not feel offended. Just like he did in the Society's high-level training class, he used the usual terminology to explain, it's because they know nothing about our logic and the logic of the inner world. The range of thought of ordinary people mostly stops at the limits of their field of vision. Therefore, they cannot see the danger. There are also some people who consider the range of a firearm, the range of an explosion, and other concepts. However, this is not enough. If they truly want to avoid trouble, they need to cross at least 2 street blocks. This is a danger that they cannot imagine. Ouyang Chen's explanation was undoubtedly the truth. Red Fox nodded. Who knew that Ouyang Chen would change the topic? It's not just them. Even you don't understand. In a sense, you are as stupid as them. No, you are even more stupid. Why? Chapter 224. Red Fox was like a poor student who had been questioned by a teacher. He was tongue-tied and did not know what to do. Ouyang Chen entered a strict teacher state. The cold and clear gaze behind the lenses caused Red Fox's taut nerves to tremble. At this time, the second question was raised. What is the logic of the inner world? Red Fox opened his mouth but did not say anything. Actually, he had already spoken the thoughts in his mind when he was reprimanding Luonan. What difference could there be? It was all about politics, reality, compromise. But it was quite difficult to say these words in front of Ouyang Chen. Ouyang Chen did not expect Red Fox to respond. He simply gave his answer. The logic of the inner world is determined by destructive power. The destructive power range of extraordinary power determines the boundaries of the inner world's logic. Red Fox was dumbfounded, but he had no way to refute. Compared to ordinary people, the number of ability users is very small. But our destructive power is very strong. We form associations, orders, and organizations. We project our organizations to various parts of the world, allowing our destructive power to cover the entire world. As long as we want to, we can directly affect the life and death of every person. Secular society has been warped by us in this way. In the end, this is a kind of bandit logic. President. Red Fox became a patient with a communication disorder. He did not know how to express his opinion at all. Ouyang Chen curled his lips. Let's change it to a nicer sounding term. We can call it the logic of the strong. This is because the most powerful destructive power is built upon the foundation of the self-logic of the strong. The reality of the situation is that there is no strong destructive power that can cover the entire world. In the end, there is a limit. Therefore, the inner world revolves around the strong, forming radiation circles of all sizes. The normal mode of interaction in the inner world is born from the collisions, compromises, and exchanges between the circles of the strong. In the logic of the inner world, the strong are the foundation. Other conflicts, compromises, and politics are just expressions. Then the question is, what is strong? Red Fox's brain finally began to spin when faced with the third question. At this time, Ouyang Chen pointed to the top floors of the 3 buildings. 3 first ablatums working together can completely collapse a skyscraper regardless of the cost. Are they strong? Red Fox answered cautiously. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. That depends on who you compare yourself to. Excellent. The Red Fox still remembered that this was the first time Ouyang Chen had acknowledged him since they met. However, what did the president acknowledge? Ouyang Chen adjusted the frame of his glasses, but his gaze was unprecedentedly cold. You finally know that strength is determined by comparison. I can add a few more sentences. Strength is achieved through resistance, through real achievements. So, where is your resistance? The Red Fox's heart twitched fiercely. He was stunned on the spot. Against whom? The scattered memories gathered together like a cluster of clouds. Red Fox vaguely remembered the time when he first came to Xiao City. Now that he thought about it, it was really strange. After suffering such a painful lesson, why would he continue to reside in this damned association? Yes, it was because of the association's resources and benefits. It was because he needed to train hard and improve quickly so that he could return to his city and settle his grudges. But day after day, year after year, how could he forget? When and for what reason did he forget? He seemed to have forgotten as well. Was it because his talent was limited and he could not make any progress? Was it because of the passage of time and the healing of the heartache? No. In the final analysis, it was just as Yuan said. His self-logic had been distorted by the logic he hated the most in the past. Wasn't the word collapsed the most habitual tone of that bunch of trash from headquarters? Distorted. Red Fox extended his hands. He looked at the structure of his body, which had slowly changed over the years, but he felt that it was very unfamiliar. Ouyang Chen's voice entered his ears. Don't get distracted. Let's continue to discuss strength. Oh, I mean to discuss why you're stupid. The turmoil in Red Fox's mind was interrupted. His melancholy lessened slightly, but his thoughts became even more chaotic. He raised his head in a daze and looked at the president who had just given him a severe warning. Resistance or comparison is fine. We need to give an example. Tell me. Who is the strongest here? Of course it's you, President. Red Fox did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he answered without the slightest hesitation. Ouyang Chen was currently the only officially registered extraordinary in the Xia City branch. He was a super powerful being who stood at the top of the pyramid of humanity. Even though the Order of Justice's secret bound first obeyed him, and Wang was a powerful being who could make people pale at the mention of his name, he was far from being mentioned in the same breath as Ouyang Chen. Please turn the page if this chapter is not finished. If Ouyang Chen completely disregarded the various restraints between extraordinaries and hardened his heart to make a move, the three first oblatums of the secular side would either have to risk their lives to summon their holy relic or they would immediately kneel and beg Fairchild to switch sides and help them. Aside from these two options, there was no third way to resist. Ouyang Chen did not hold back. He nodded in approval. And then. Just talk about our side. The secretary, right? Red Fox's response was relatively quick. Ouyang Chen declined to comment. And then? Red Fox slowly pondered and answered, and then me, Ying, kitten, papercut, bamboo pole. I'm not familiar with Bai Xinyan. Ouyang Chen laughed. He did not make any movements, but a detailed perspective map of a building appeared in front of the two. It was none other than Frost River reality. Several figures were projected inside. They were He Yuan and the other members of the society. Although they were small in size, they were vivid and lifelike. What about him? Ouyang Chen pointed at the child that Red Fox had intentionally or unintentionally skipped over, Luo Nan. Red Fox sneered. Him. He's not even an awakened. Yeah, he's still not an awakened. Ouyang Chen nodded but then he sighed. He recited in a low voice, the common people are bright, I alone am muddled. The common people examine, I alone am muddled. Red Fox's attainments in ancient texts were shallow. He was dizzy from listening to Ouyang Chen. He could only raise his hands in surrender. President, Ouyang Chen did not intend to make things difficult for Red Fox. He laughed and said, I'm not a specialist in reading scriptures. From my personal understanding, the meaning of these words is, everyone's energy is limited. When a person establishes a higher level of logic, it will be hard for him to divert his attention to deal with the chaotic logic of the common people. And when he forms a higher level of logic, the logic of the common people will be meaningless to him. Therefore, the intelligent people of the common people will always be able to see his muddleheadedness and childishness. The further the logic of the common people is from the logic of the higher level, the more intense the contrast becomes. After reaching a certain level, they will no longer be able to communicate. They will run in opposite directions. This is why it is said, the path of understanding is like obscurity. The path of advancing is like retreating. The path of barbarians is like the path of barbarians. Yang Chen gazed at the small and exquisite projection. His gaze was deep and distant. A higher level, an even stronger confrontation. If we use the image of the common people to see and evaluate his actions, how would we know the hardships within? Besides, he is still a novice. Everything must be accumulated from the beginning. Chapter 225. A group of people looked at each other in dismay at the junction between the private room area and the public arena of Frost River Reality Area A. He Yuan stopped talking. Earlier, Red Fox had entered a strange state of silence. He did not respond no matter what. The excitement from before was like a bonfire that had been extinguished, turning into ashes. She can give orders, but I think her ability to communicate with others is average. Zhang Yingying whispered into Bai Xinyan's ear. It was easy for her to talk while standing. Bai Xinyan tightened her grip on Zhang Yingying's neck once more to shut her up. He Yuan was as quiet as ever. She just lowered her eyes as if she was muttering to herself. On the street, Bamboo Pole walked quickly toward Frost River Reality. At the same time, he used the surrounding surveillance cameras to circle around a few times before finally capturing Red Fox's image. The angle of the image was not very good, but he could still see Red Fox's eye-catching red jacket. He stood like a stake in the stream of people. He was quietly lost in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. Bamboo Pole let out a long breath. It's good that he didn't just charge in. Those words were effective. Papercut swayed his slightly plump body with great effort to keep up with Bamboo Pole's footsteps. He tried to come up with an idea. Can we take the lead and verify it? The conversation between the two of them had intentionally avoided the encrypted channel so as to not agitate the Red Fox. Bamboo Pole shook his head without even thinking. It's too dangerous. According to Luo Nan's updated dynamic map, the one closest to He Yuan and the others was the corpse marked as an Ablatum Knight. However, the distance between each Ablatum Knight was not large. Right now, the situation in Frost River Reality Area A was like a strange chess game. The luxury private room area and the public arena were the boundaries of the river, separating the society from the order of justice. The society had deployed their chariots and cannons. Before they could do anything, the old generals were already fighting with their own Shurxiang. However, the rest of the chess pieces were ready, and their formation was strict. Normally, these chariots and cannons were prepared to devour their own old generals. However, if the society really wanted to cross the river, then the corresponding pressure would naturally be borne by the society. Papercut spread his hands after listening to Bamboo Pole's explanation. Something will happen if we verify it. Something will happen if we don't verify it. Isn't this tormenting us? That boss Luo should at least say something clearly. Papercut did not take a stand on either side of the argument, but Red Fox's intense and resolute reaction stirred up some sympathy in him. At the same time, Luo Nan's long silence made him a bit dissatisfied. Even if he was a teenager, since he had stepped into the circle and participated in the operation, he had to show enough professionalism and teamwork. Especially in such a critical moment, Cheater could kill the entire team with a single thought. As a team member, who wouldn't be afraid? In the end, the Red Fox was just overreacting. Papercut shot another glance at the encrypted channel. Then, as expected, he saw a young and childish face. For some unknown reason, Cat Eyes, who was sharing her view, had fixed her gaze on Luo Nan's face for quite some time. This seemingly immature high school student had entered a state of silence since the beginning of the debate. Be it sarcastic remarks or supportive actions, none of them could move him. Upon closer inspection, Luo Nan should still be using his all-encompassing senses. His eyes were vacant, and his thoughts were misty. His attention wasn't placed on the matter of Red Fox. If one were to put it in a good way, it would be due diligence and indifference. But if one were to put it in a bad way, it would be too arrogant, selfish, and cold-blooded. Kids these days. Papercut's view leaned toward the latter, but he was calmer than Red Fox. In the end, he just sent a private message to Cat Eyes. "Hey, Kitty. Do you see anything?" Cat Eyes did not respond immediately. Her view did not change at all. Was she entranced? Papercut was helpless. He could only send another message. Is there a way to verify it without provoking the order? It was in the instant he sent the message that he inexplicably recalled the conclusion of a famous lecturer in the Society's team coordination class. When the public channel of a team is idle, private messages are prevalent. When that happens, the collapse of the team is just a few feet away. Papercut grinned. He looked at Luo Nan's image in the encrypted channel and felt even worse. At this time, Cat Eye's view swayed. It seemed that someone was calling out to her. "Kitty, what do you say?" Inside Frost River reality, Zhang Yingying could no longer hold back. She forcefully pried open Bai Xinyan's chokehold arm and called out to Cat Eyes. Papercut was not the only one who felt the terrible atmosphere of the team. Zhang Yingying had firmly stood by Luo Nan's side before, but she was very clear in her mind. As the focal point of the conflict, this kid's taciturn way of doing things was extremely inappropriate. Acting deep and reserved was no longer popular. Everyone liked warm guys. However, this brother Luo Nan really could not be woken up. Bai Xinyan, from the perspective of a doctor, advised her not to disturb Luo Nan while he was in the middle of sensing. This was to avoid a situation from happening. As for He Yueyin, Luo Nan's impression of her as a swift and decisive secretary was inexplicably deep and reserved tonight. She spoke haltingly and her goal was unclear. Her performance was completely different from last week when they were dealing with the human-faced arachnid. It seemed that He Yueyin had yet to truly clarify the so-called mission up until now. This made Red Fox so angry that his brain juice was about to burst out. Helpless, Zhang Yingying could only consult Cat Eyes, who was the most professional on core issues. If Cat Eyes could understand Luo Nan's intentions, help explain a few words or provide a proof, then there would be a possibility of loosening this tight knot. Cat Eyes did not respond immediately after the call was sent out. Instead, 2 seconds passed before she suddenly turned her head. It was as if she had been startled awake. This gave Zhang Yingying a fright. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Cat Eyes extended her hand and straightened the flat-brimmed hat she wore crookedly. The shadow hanging down from the brim of the hat blocked half of her face. "What are you talking about?" Zhang Yingying looked at her suspiciously before saying, "I'm talking about the matter of verification. Red Fox is unforgiving and Luo Nan, this fellow, just can't get a fart out of it. Do you have a way to verify, something a bit more reliable?" On the other side, Papercut nodded to himself. He was thinking the same thing as Zhang Yingying. But then he saw that Cat Eyes did not respond. Instead, her line of sight shifted back to Luo Nan's face. She moved away slightly before returning back. It was as if that delicate and pretty young face possessed some sort of terrifying magnetism. This was the rhythm of being mesmerized. Papercut could not help but ridicule in his mind. It was also at this time that Cat Eyes' line of sight suddenly congealed. It was highly focused, so much so that the interface of her entire field of vision became blurry. The only thing that was clear was the pair of pupils that slowly rose up in the center of the interface. They still carried a bit of mottled colors. The pupils belonged to Luo Nan. This contradictory character seemed to have finally heard the various doubts and dissatisfactions of the people. He temporarily walked out from his self-enclosed logic to connect with the outside world. The target of Luo Nan's gaze was Cat Eyes, but Papercut was paying attention to Cat Eyes' shared perspective. It was the same as looking through Cat Eye's eyes and locking gazes with Luo Nan. Okay, the word locking gazes was not accurate. It should be a one-sided observation. But inexplicably, when Papercut's gaze locked with Luo Nan's pupils that could not be considered clear, a cold shiver suddenly ran through his body. At this moment, even the drizzle falling from the sky had an additional chill to it. It seeped down to the bones. Bamboo poles whisper faintly entered Papercut's ears, "This eye is sinister." Chapter 226. No matter how many people noticed the strangeness in Luo Nan's pupils, Cat Eye's feelings were 10 times stronger than theirs. It must be known that she was the one facing Luo Nan directly. Moreover, she was the unlucky one who suffered Luo Nan's torment early on. Right now, there was a chain that locked her body and soul. And behind these turbid eyes was a pair of demonic eyes. They looked at her from the outside to the inside, from the inside to the outside. They saw through her completely. The most terrifying thing was that she did not know how Luo Nan did it. She did not know a shred of it. It was like a figment of her imagination, but the trembling in the depths of her body and soul was so real. Cat Eye's breathing stopped for half a second. It was this half a second that evoked the feeling of terror that surged like a tide when she encountered the Devil's Ritual at Limestone Water Village pub last week. It was as if the churning emotions could drown her at any time. It even gave her the urge to turn around and run. Cat Eye's feet did not move, but her entire body was stiff. She saw Luo Nan raise his right hand at this time. His 5 fingers were slightly open and bent, and his index finger was slightly straighter. It was as if he was subconsciously drawing something, but it was also as if he was going to directly reach over. Luo Nan's arm really did reach forward. At the same time, Cat Eye's could clearly feel the space between her eyebrows tremble slightly. It was not that Luo Nan's fingertips had touched her. In reality, Luo Nan's arm was not extended straight. His fingertips were still some distance away from the brim of Cat Eye's hat. He just tapped from a distance, and the direction of his finger corresponded to the space between her eyebrows. With a tap of his finger, he swiped downwards. Then, or even earlier, Cat Eye's face, throat, shoulders, back, chest, abdomen, and even her legs began to tremble one after another. Luo Nan's finger moved down like a shadow, tracing Cat Eye's in the blink of an eye. It seemed to draw an extremely simple outline of a body. Cat Eye's did not move at all. She let him do as he pleased. This angered Zhang Yingying to the side. Luo Nan's perverted method, no matter what it meant, would only increase the distance between him and the others. It would make the situation even worse. She immediately shouted, "Hey! What kind of demonic madness is this?" Luo Nan turned his head upon hearing this. His gaze met Zhang Yingying's, and he reached out and tapped through the air. Zhang Yingying was so angry that she was amused. She couldn't move her upper body, but she forcefully kicked her legs in exasperation. She wanted to teach this crazy boy a lesson. However, she had only lifted half of her slender, snow-white legs when her chest and abdomen began to tremble. This time, Zhang Yingying knew how powerful he was. She let out a sigh. Even though Bai Xinyan was strangling her neck, she couldn't help but twist her body to resist the inexplicable trembling and itchiness. Her long legs, which she had raised up, also gave way. Next, no matter how Zhang Yingying dodged, Luo Nan's extended finger was always able to accurately correspond with the trembling points on her body. In the blink of an eye, another outline was drawn. At this moment, Bai Xinyan didn't even have the time to release her arm to free Zhang Yingying. Zhang Yingying had been in a great rage, but the moment Luo Nan's finger stopped moving, the white rainbow that revolved around her body gave an inexplicable soft cry. It resonated with the trembling points from afar. The power that had been painstakingly polished over the past few days seemed to have gained a bit more purity and clarity. She was stunned. No one besides her knew of the changes that had occurred within Zhang Yingying's body. However, Luo Nan displayed a treacherous and bewitching scene. Even He Yuan, who had been calm and collected all this time, gave up pondering over the situation. She opened her eyes wide and looked over. Luo Nan truly withdrew his hand when he finished drawing the outline of Zhang Yingying's body. This was already enough for him. Luo Nan narrowed his eyes at this moment. He didn't need to use his naked eyes for his mental senses to light up with resplendent starlight. What should have been the cat's eye's position was not the cat's eye. Instead, it was a simple structure formed from a dozen or so bright specks of starlight and the connections between the specks of starlight. Zhang Yingying's position was the same, but it was a bit more concise. This was like the basic composition that people were used to using to mark the constellations in the sky. And within the range of Luo Nan's senses, the number of these constellations was increasing without end. The blessing of Fairchild's shield of truth was temporary, but in the end, it allowed Luo Nan to understand what he could do with his current soul strength with the support of a tough and resilient body. Compared to the pure out-of-body state, the body and soul as one state had many limitations, but it also had benefits that the soul body could not achieve. The most direct change was reflected in the mutual interference between the mental and the material planes. The configuration outline of the body and soul as one became the hub for the highly efficient conversion of energy and information. The pressure on the fleshly body exploded, but the consumption caused by the mutual interference decreased by at least 50%. In other words, the effect of Luo Nan's soul strength interfering with reality had doubled in the blink of an eye. And the interference that needed to be overcome during the process was greatly reduced. The first thing that could be seen was the substantial increase in precision. Luo Nan had always been particularly sensitive to energy and information. He could measure the material plane in terms of precision. His limit was displayed when he used clairvoyance on his own body. It was approximately 1/10 millimeter. When placed outside his body, it was on the millimeter scale. It was only a rough observation, it was not particularly exquisite. But right now, the limit of his external precision easily broke through the domain of 1/10 millimeter. The results even surpassed the resolution of the naked eye. Even though there was still a difference of heaven and earth between this and precise observation instruments on the nanometer scale, this meant that within the range of his clairvoyance, no matter what kind of shadow or corner it was like he was there in person. Moreover, he could see everything clearly regardless of the intensity of the light. And if he concentrated his energy, shrunk the range, and increased it by another level, he was completely capable of accomplishing this. The large increase in precision was obviously a good thing, but this change did not bring convenience to Luo Nan. Instead, it brought a large amount of useless details and junk information. The floating dust, the crawling insects, the filth in the corner of the wall, and of course, the background noise of electric currents, the messy breathing of humans, the rustling sound of rain falling from the ceiling of the amusement park, and even the changes in temperature, the exchange of air, and so on. These details, which were hard to notice in the past, were all interwoven and mixed together, pushing towards Luo Nan. Of course, the stimulation of information from multiple levels and angles had to be fed back to the structure of his body and soul. But the corresponding processing efficiency was bound to be limited by the speed of nerve conduction, methods, and other material planes. It was impossible to process everything big and small. Luo Nan had to make some trade-offs. It must be said that humans had formed a fuzzy recognition mechanism over the course of hundreds of thousands of years of genetic evolution. They were used to starting with the overall characteristics of things, avoiding the pressure of identifying too many details. But the problem Luo Nan faced right now was that the original fuzzy whole had been divided into large amounts of clear details under the circumstances of the substantial increase in the precision of his senses. The boundary between the two had collapsed. The clearer the details, the greater the amount of information, and the greater the consumption of analytical resources. This directly affected the upper limits of the types of information Luo Nan could receive. It also limited the range of his senses. Chapter 227. How could the old world be explained in a new way? Luo Nan faced this challenge the moment he unleashed his all-encompassing senses. He had to focus his attention to analyze the various basic information elements and rearrange their order. There was a period of time when he reached the state where he could no longer see a mountain and no longer see water. Living people, living emotions, were all decomposed. For example, cat eyes. Luo Nan knew that she was afraid the moment he came into contact with her. And this living example would be decomposed by him into breathing, heartbeat, pupils, muscles, and even hormone secretion and conduction. He would then reconstruct them. He wanted to find a more concise, more essential special structure that was able to describe all kinds of people and all kinds of states. If it were anyone else, they would have been beaten senseless in front of such a huge amount of detailed material. They would have lost their ability to completely reconstruct things. They would have been no different from a lunatic at that time. Luo Nan was stupefied in the beginning. The radius of his mental senses extended to around 80 meters, covering area A. His senses nearly collapsed. The large amount of detailed information was like a network virus. It flooded all of his sensors in a short period of time, congealing his neural network. The high-intensity stimulation in a short period of time caused him to experience serious neurological activity suppression. His cognitive abilities greatly deteriorated, and his IQ dropped by a level. Fortunately, Luo Nan had the support of the Shield of Truth. His nervous system and even his entire fleshly body had a substantial increase in endurance and recovery. This allowed him to withstand the initial assault of the junk information. Then Luo Nan made a crucial choice. He temporarily gave up on everything on the purely material plane. He only paid attention to the mutual interference between the mental and material planes. In other words, the domain of life. This was probably around the time when Red Fox was yelling at He Yuan to wipe his face and butt. Back then, Luo Nan just wanted to fight for his honor. He wanted to use the most outstanding results to complete He Yuan's mission and shut up Red Fox's stinky mouth. According to the requirements of the mission, the most crucial thing was to find the hidden Oblatum Knights of the Order of Justice. Luo Nan's choice was forced by the situation. But it was precisely because of this that he unexpectedly broke through his blocked train of thought. The number of constellations increased endlessly. Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying weren't the only ones. Everyone in the surroundings, including He Yuan, Bai Xinyan, Xue Lei, Xue Weiluan, and the special forces, were all transforming in this direction under the clairvoyance of Luo Nan's mental senses. However, compared to Cat Eyes and Zhang Yingying's constellations that were close to abstract symbols, the others' reflections were more like sketches of portraits that were quickly copied. The lines were scattered, covering up the stars. They were faintly discernible and had a somewhat hard-to-determine meaning. Luo Nan called them life sketches. This was his new interpretation of the old world. The real world was still an object that could be ignored. Luo Nan was in the middle of comprehending and combing through the marvels of the life sketches when someone grabbed him by the collar. "Kid, you're acting like a hoodlum. What the hell are you doing?" The only one who could do that was Zhang Yingying. She finally broke free from Bai Xinyan's control and rushed forward to retaliate. She turned her face and asked Cat Eyes, "Kitty, are you all right?" Cat Eyes did not speak. She just lowered her eyes. The shadow of her flat-brimmed hat covered half her face. She did not look happy no matter how one looked at it. "Hey, are you guys done yet?" Papercut finally could not hold back from speaking in the encrypted channel. "This isn't the time to be flirting, right?" The words were directed at Zhang Yingying, but halfway through his words, Papercut inexplicably recalled Luo Nan's pair of motley eyes. He shuddered. He instinctively felt that he should not overlook this fellow with those evil eyes. His thoughts spun and he simply said, "Boss Luo, I don't have any other requests. Can you give me a clear explanation? Even if you don't want to prove it, a reason is fine." Papercut and Bamboo Pole had already arrived at the outskirts of Frost River reality. They had locked onto Red Fox's position. He said this because he wanted to use the conversation in the encrypted channel to distract Red Fox's attention. Papercut did not even hope that Luo Nan would reply. As long as Red Fox could see Luo Nan's eyes, he would be stunned. "Hey, cat eyes, what the hell are you looking at the floor for?" Just as he was quietly closing in, feeling the pressure like a mountain, a buzzing sound suddenly brushed past his head. He raised his head and saw a miniature flying shuttle that was only half the length of an arm. It streaked through the curtain of rain in the night sky and plunged into the hall of Frost River reality. Deep space gray paint job. Military? Or is it the Aerospace Army? Papercut saw the origin of the flying shuttle and felt it was a bit strange. However, he did not have the time to think too much about it. Suddenly, a brand new image popped up in the encrypted channel. It was a real-time surveillance video. It was shot from a high vantage point in the inner region of Frost River reality. It looked a bit shaky. Papercut immediately thought that this was the masterpiece of the flying shuttle from the military. The image of the military flying shuttle entered the encrypted channel of the society. What was going on? Before he could figure it out, the image split up and connected to the surveillance results of Frost River reality itself. The flying shuttle was taken into the frame. From this angle, one could see the eye-catching military logo on the side of the shuttle. The flying shuttle passed through several surveillance cameras in a row. It flew nimbly within Frost River reality. The built-in camera circled the most critical area, Area A. Then, the camera zoomed in and narrowed its range. Soon, it locked onto the true target. Right in the center of the camera was the fat corpse that Luo Nan called the Oblatum Knight. At the same time, the main image split up once more. There was an additional surveillance camera that illuminated the fat corpse from a different angle. What's the meaning of this? She's playing for real. Papercut and Bamboo Pole's exclamations were completely different. Papercut was stunned. He turned his head and saw Bamboo Pole give him a signal. Bamboo Pole extended 3 fingers. Right now, the two of them were only 5 meters away from Red Fox. Red Fox seemed to be in a daze. He was completely unaware of what was happening. Papercut dispelled his distracting thoughts. He did not care about the progress of the video in the encrypted channel. Under Bamboo Pole's command, he counted to 3 and suddenly pounced forward. He reached out and grabbed Red Fox's left shoulder. At the same time, Bamboo Pole grabbed Red Fox's right shoulder. The two of them exerted force at the same time. They had to prevent Red Fox from breaking free. However, the two of them were curious after they made contact. Where did that feeling of being solid and empty come from? In any case, they had Red Fox under control. Red Fox was clearly a bit stunned, but he did not struggle. Papercut was quite baffled. Could it be that Red Fox had figured it out? Or he had a feeling in his heart. His attention returned to the encrypted channel. He saw the gunmen of the Order finally discover the troublesome intruder that was the military flying shuttle. They immediately raised their guns and fired. The military flying shuttle made evasive maneuvers. However, several gunmen with a high level of tacit understanding fired in a crisscrossed manner. In the end, the flying shuttle was blasted apart by the electromagnetic bullets in midair. The image that overlooked the scene instantly turned black. However, it could be seen from the surveillance footage that the flying shuttle's own weapons had opened fire at the same time before being shot. The target was not any of the gunmen. It was the fat corpse that was lying on the ground. The military is verifying it. Before Papercut could finish his thought, the fat corpse exploded with a bang in the next second. Flesh, blood, and bones sprayed everywhere. The ground was filled with holes wherever it passed. The nearby walls were pierced through. The penetrative power was incomparable. What made everyone's eyelids twitch the most was that a small and thin figure shot out from the splattering mist of blood. It instantly flashed out of the surveillance footage. Chapter 228. What the hell? Papercut's exclamation was absolutely the thoughts of most people in the encrypted channel. Although the skinny figure was fast, there was not a single person in the encrypted channel who did not have sharp eyes and ears. They could clearly see the flickering changes of the figure. The skinny figure had clearly leaped out from the exploded corpse. The monitoring screen switched quickly. It switched continuously, but it only captured a fleeting afterimage. This situation persisted for around 3 to 5 seconds before the screen turned black once more. It was at this moment that all the monitoring screens were finished. Papercut hurriedly asked Bamboo Pole, "What's going on?" Bamboo Pole was helpless. "Don't ask me. Someone just used official channels to take away the highest level of authority in the monitoring system. Then, the order of justice probably carried out physical destruction. Now I can retreat." Most people ignored this clumsy joke. Their minds were still flashing with the earlier scene. The figure that leaped out from the disintegrated corpse. There was no doubt that the argument just now had a result. But the encrypted channel was extremely silent. Whether it was Luo Nan or poisonous snake Zhang Yingying, neither of them spoke. Clearly, they were taking Red Fox's emotions into consideration. Of course, this was good, but Papercut and Bamboo Pole glanced at each other. They secretly tightened their grip at the same time to prevent Red Fox from thinking things through and doing something irrational. "The police are here," Red Fox said coldly. The three of them were too eye-catching right now. They poked into the stream of people, holding their shoulders and arms. They looked like plainclothes thieves. A police officer controlling the order of the scene discovered this situation. He immediately approached with his gun pointed. Papercut would not dare to let go even if the Emperor of Heaven came, let alone the police. He did not know how to persuade Red Fox. Bamboo Pole used a method of provocation to speak. "A man is a man. If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Do as you please." Red Fox was surprisingly straightforward. Papercut and Bamboo Pole looked at each other when they heard this. They just felt that Red Fox was so calm that it gave them headaches. They were unable to judge him. Red Fox just shook his shoulders and slid away from the grip of the two. He did not make any further movements. He just said calmly, "That fellow is Ghost Thunder. I met him once before. Damn. It really is that big bomb." Papercut's answer was like a piece of paper that was broken with a touch. Ghost Thunder was one of the most famous Oblatum Knights of the Order of Justice in Xia City. This fellow's most famous ability was that he could turn most of the materials he came into contact with into terrifying explosives. Coupled with his extraordinary movement speed, whether it was attacking or assassinating, he was a terrifying character. The military shuttle's inexplicable verification had actually activated this terrifying character. No one knew who this guy's next target would be. The military has set the pace well. Scissors grumbled under his breath, but then he realized that something was wrong. It seemed like when the military shuttle flew in, a certain someone's reaction was very strange. He turned to look at Bamboo Pole. "What did you say earlier?" "Serious." "Who's serious?" Bamboo Pole did not reply immediately. Instead, he sent a message into the encrypted channel. "We have met up with Red Fox. Be careful, it's Ghost Thunder. Now, everyone should have no objections to Mr. Luo's omnidirectional sensing ability." The one who spoke was He Yueyin. No one would have thought that she, the operations manager, would not be afraid of blowing things up even though Zhang Yingying had misgivings. She would speak so directly. Papercut cried out bitterly in his heart. He instinctively reached out to grab Red Fox, but Red Fox did not move at all. His face was expressionless. Could it be that he was willing to accept his loss? Or was he drugged with bewitching drugs? Papercut retracted his hand in embarrassment. He Yueyin did not pay attention to the matter of Ghost Thunder in the encrypted channel at this time. She just extended the topic of omnidirectional sensing. She issued an order. From now on, all communication must be done through the encrypted channel. Mr. Luo, Cat Eyes, confirm the current omnidirectional sensing radius. 55 meters. Cat Eyes' answer was straightforward. This number was 10% higher than her usual performance. 80 meters. Luo Nan's nervous activity suppression symptoms had already disappeared. He was freed from his state of turning a deaf ear. He hesitated for a moment when he heard this and reported a relatively conservative number. For the time being, Luo Nan was uncertain of He Yuan's mission requirements. He needed to be cautious. This was the limit of his ability to balance his life form and the purely material plane. He was a bit stronger than Cat Eyes, but he was far too lacking compared to the 500-meter sensing radius he had in his last operation. Sure enough, He Yuan was a bit surprised. 80 meters. Luo Nan was just about to explain when Zhang Yingying exposed the fact that she had violated the rules by looking up classified information. Ha! I remember that it was 500 meters in the briefing, but it was in an abnormal soul-attached state. Now that my body and soul are one, I can retain 16% of my sensing radius. Is the Shield of Truth really that useful? Luo Nan blinked. Was this number acceptable? He could not help but ask, what's the standard for 16%? Newbie. Zhang Yingying curled her lips in disgust, but she still explained, due to the limitations of the material plane, the normal sensing range of a mentally enhanced person in the state of body and soul as one has a huge gap when compared to the soul-attached, out-of-body state, and other mental forms. Normally, a person who can reach 8% to 10% is considered qualified. On the other hand, for someone like Kat, who specializes in perception, when she becomes an architect, she can casually go out-of-body state. It is possible for her sensing range to explosively increase by 10 or 20 times. At that time, you won't be considered much. Cat Eyes did not respond to Zhang Yingying's praise. Luo Nan slowly nodded his head. He had a general understanding of his level and position. Zhang Yingying was right. The enhancement of the Shield of Truth played a crucial role in supporting his current sensing range. His sensing radius of 80 meters was achieved by relying on his strong physical body's endurance. However, Zhang Yingying had used the wrong data. Luo Nan's retention ratio wasn't 16%. It was 10%, or even lower. Last time, Luo Nan's soul was in an out-of-body state. Thanks to the Wraith Sign's 2 consecutive sacrificial activities, Luo Nan's mental senses had reached a radius of 800 meters. Yesterday, the Wraith Sign had successfully hunted, causing his soul power to rise once again. Perhaps the upper limit of his sensing range would increase a little, but he didn't dare to try it anymore. The current range of Luo Nan's natural senses was only around 10 meters. The upper limit of his senses was 800 meters, and only 1.2% of his senses were retained. This was 6 to 7 times lower than the lower limit. It was simply too horrible to look at. It was clear to see just how far the imbalance between his body and soul had reached. The increase in physical strength was not something that could be done in a day. It could not be rushed. However, Luo Nan had reason to believe that even if the effects of the Shield of Truth disappeared in the future, his retention ratio would no longer hover at the level of 1%. Instead, it would increase by a considerable amount. As for how much it would increase, that would depend on his life sketch. It would depend on whether or not it was a reasonable and self-consistent new explanation of the old world. Right now, it looked like this was indeed a feasible direction. Draw a sketch. Refine a configuration. Use the most basic of points and lines to depict a rough and distinct life sketch. When the life sketch was simplified to its pinnacle, just like cat eyes and Zhang Yingying, every living being was depicted with concise points and lines. They were like groups of constellations on an ancient star atlas. They were shaken to various parts of the deep void, and with Luonan as the center, they revolved and cruised. And this star atlas was endlessly expanding deeper and wider. The current range had already expanded to over 100 meters, completely covering Area A of Frost River reality. Chapter 229. This was perhaps the clearest command He Yuan had issued since the beginning of tonight's operation. She even used the form of text to post the instructions in the encrypted channel. Current objective: eliminate all gunmen of the order. Priority is given to the non-ability users. Luo Nan is the first executor of Frost River reality and the connected buildings, while Cat Eyes is the second executor. Everyone else, protect Luo Nan and Cat Eyes as they move safely. Ensure that the entire range of Luo Nan's senses covers the entirety of Frost River reality and the connected buildings. What does that mean? The target itself was very clear, but not many people understood He Yuan's intentions. If he wanted to deal with the enemy, what about the Oblatum Knights of the Church? What about An Wang and the other secular officiants? That was the real deal. It's true that the opponent is currently focusing all his attention on Child, but do you really think he's a target when you make a move? I really don't know what He Yuan is thinking. Papercut turned his head to look at Bamboo Pole. You've been on a mission with the secretary before. Was she like this before? Papercut had already spoken rather tactfully. His true meaning was, why did this commander of the military's elite Deep Blue Walkers feel so unreliable? Bamboo Pole didn't say anything. He just smiled and tapped his ear, reminding him that He Yuan had already ordered all communication to be done through the encrypted channel set up by the Hexier. As the commander, He Yuan issued an official order, and the encrypted channel immediately cleared up. Only the status of execution could be reported. To put it bluntly, this meant, from now on, everyone just focus on doing their job and don't talk nonsense. Next, He Yuan sent out even more specific orders and details within the encrypted channel. Luo Nan, Cat Eyes, and Xue Lei form the inner circle. Xue Weiluan and the Special Police will follow standard operational procedures and execute a closed-loop defense. White Salt, Yingying, and I will coordinate with each other on the perimeter. We will cover our advance in the 10 o'clock direction. Outside of Frost River reality, Papercut, who possessed some basic tactical accomplishments, felt his scalp go numb following He Yuan's command. There was nothing much to say about his route of action. The 10 o'clock direction was roughly a 60-degree angle from the Chuhihan boundary, between the private room area and the public arena. Then, he moved sideways. The goal was very clear. It was to display Luo Nan's all-encompassing sensing ability to the greatest limit. He would cover the enemies in Area A while pulling apart the distance to react. This choice was very correct. The problem was the formation. The SWAT team's closed-loop defense was a tactical formation used in close-range anti-riot operations. It could be used to protect the target within the closed loop when facing the siege of a large number of thugs who did not have long-range killing weapons. But now, He Yuan and the others were not only facing the cold-blooded gunmen of the Order, but also Ghost Thunder, who had a lot of long-range attacks. What would they do if they were hit in the middle by a high-explosive thunderfire? This. Just what was He Yuan thinking? While Papercut was dumbstruck, Bamboo Pole gestured for him to calm down and not be impatient. Bamboo Pole hinted at Red Fox, indicating that he could restrain himself right now. What about Papercut? At the moment, Bamboo Pole was still providing basic technical support for the logo. In order to avoid any accidents, he took the initiative to ask in the encrypted channel after he appeased Papercut, "Boss Luo, can you confirm that the information conversion of the logo is normal?" Luo Nan probably still wasn't used to this. 3 seconds passed before he said, "It's normal." Papercut scratched his head. He believed that quite a few of his companions who were participating in the operation were feeling the same way as him. Though there was certainly no one who doubted Luo Nan's sensing ability right now, this person was still too noob when it came to doing things. Bamboo Pole, on the other hand, was very patient. He explained one by one, "In order to ensure timely updates, I have already relinquished control rights. Right now, you are the #1 controller. The secretary and kitten can mark the route and insert flags to make corrections. Have you played the classic Minesweeper before? That's what it means. Right now, you can use telekinesis mode to reset the logo into the encrypted channel." Oh, okay. Another 2 seconds passed, and the logo in the encrypted channel was finally reset. The logo was still based on the elevation of Frost River reality. It was densely covered with red and green dots. Those who had participated in the previous debate noticed that the location of the fat corpse no longer had a red dot. It looked like the specific content had been updated. Bamboo Pole gestured an "okay" to Papercut and Red Fox. He winked, indicating that the little fellow could still be saved. Red Fox's response was cold. Papercut smiled wryly. He felt that he had perfectly substituted himself into Red Fox's previous role. It was awkward no matter how he looked at it. Was he too neurotic? He tried to return to his previous peaceful state, but before Bamboo Pole could put down his hand, nearly half of the 16 or 17 red dots on the logo that represented the enemy were erased in a single breath. What's going on? Papercut felt very mystified. He nearly fainted. Even this can be mishandled. Right now, Yuan was marking the next course of action on the logo. The extending blue arrow clearly stopped. She seemed to be stunned by this sudden scene. The encrypted channel was deathly silent for a time until Luo Nan's voice rang out. He was clearly inexperienced, but he strove to be experienced. It was just like the soldier's report. 7 gunmen have been eliminated. Yuan. Cat eyes, ? Bamboo Pole, ! Papercut blurted out, "What the hell?" As for Red Fox, he smacked his fists against his palms, creating a crisp bang. Zhang Yingying had been bouncing around to warm up her body, preparing to deal with the upcoming fierce battle. She nearly sprained her ankle when Luo Nan's message came out. She rushed to support Bai Xinyan, turned her head, and shouted, "Are you kidding me?" Everyone's reactions were different at this very moment. On the map, most of the motionless red dots suddenly became restless. Luo Nan's message continued to update while Cat Eyes added in a hoarse voice, "There are Ablatum Knights advancing toward us. 30 clock direction." They disappeared. The possibility of it being Ghost Thunder is extremely high. There are still 3 more behind them. No, 4. It was as if an invisible drum had exploded in the air. The situation that had been stagnant all this time suddenly entered a high-altitude stalling state. Nearly everyone could feel a dizziness that bordered on absurd. Yuan displayed her top-notch mental qualities at this moment. She did not waste words and gave another order, 10 clock direction. Yingying, hold down the pace. White Salt and I will protect the right flank. Move. The instant her words fell, everyone's vision suddenly darkened. The spectators outside of Frost River reality cried out in alarm at the same time. At this moment, the focus of everyone's gazes, the triangular spaceship's power supply was cut off. The spaceship instantly darkened, and the interior of the spaceship was pitch black in comparison to the spotlights outside. Only a second or two passed before the cries of alarm scattered. This was because the darkness did not just cover Frost River reality. It spread to the 3 connected buildings at an inconceivable speed. Chapter 230. The darkness that suddenly descended within Frost River reality was like a curtain that covered one's face. Theoretically speaking, ability users with extraordinary powers and special forces equipped with exoskeleton armor would not be affected by the darkness. However, an atmosphere filled with malice and murderous intent followed the arrival of the darkness. Feelings and such were fabricated. They floated in the air, but the restless negative psychic pressure was real. The group of people from the society did not know the range of the darkness for now. However, they could personally feel the urgency and impatience within the darkness. The more it was like this, the more they needed to be steady. Under He Yuan's deployment, Luo Nan was surrounded by the special forces armed with guns and shields. He advanced sideways, but his speed was not fast. Maintaining the formation was his #1 priority. Ghost Thunder and the other Ablatum Knights advanced with all their might. The distance between the 2 sides rapidly closed. Every Ablatum Knight was equivalent to a C+ rank awakened. They were infinitely close to the architect level. Overall, they followed the consistent logic of the order and cultivated strictly. The power they possessed was more focused, direct, and tyrannical than ability users with outstanding personalities. Moreover, there was a natural tacit understanding between them. When the 4 Ablatum Knights turned their attention to the Society's team at the same time, their malice intertwined with each other and blended with the darkness. It was like an incorporeal and brutal evil beast that roared soundlessly. At this moment, the format pyramid on the bodies of Xue Weiluan, his father, and the special forces shook at the same time. They were like candlelight in the wind, nearly extinguished. All of the attacks followed the flow of energy and information. Several firecrackers exploded on Luo Nan's mental plane. The attacks on the mental plane disturbed the structure of his body and soul. Luo Nan's feet were a bit messed up. Then Cat Eyes and Shuele grabbed his arms one after the other. They supported him as he moved. Cat Eyes did not say a word. Shuele whispered, "Nanster, are you okay?" Luo Nan shook his head. The enemy's response was very decisive. They immediately changed directions and advanced. They coordinated with the power outage and used the darkness to launch a powerful attack. It was filled with the feeling of planning. The faintly discernible feeling of discomfort that had been present ever since he left the luxurious room appeared once more. But this time, the feeling of indescribable inexplicable had lessened. The constellations circling within his mental senses were clearly revealing something. Luo Nan used a brand new perspective to analyze this dark and subtle hidden information. The most fundamental purpose of drawing the life sketches was to come up with a new explanation of the world in a dimension that was most suitable for him. He wanted to establish an axis and establish rules. Because of this, when Luo Nan drew these life sketches and pieced them together to form a marvelous starry sky, large amounts of chaotic information no longer rushed at him like a swarm of bees. Instead, they revolved around each constellation, interacting with each other. Only after a buffering and combing process was Luo Nan able to selectively extract the information. Such a model was also very crude. Compared to the feedback he received when his soul left his body in an out-of-body state, it was even more inferior. Many meaningful details would certainly be left out, and there would be a lot of redundancy at the same time. But in the end, it was an effective method of explanation, and it was most suited to Luo Nan's reality. It didn't matter what sort of secret methods the other party used. As long as they were effective against Luo Nan would be able to sense them. Naturally, there would be a new explanation for them on this star atlas. They would be incorporated into Luo Nan's rules, making it convenient for him to finally trace the source and lock onto the target. Originally, the information was very vague, but as the four Ablatum Knights advanced like a hurricane, Luo Nan's mind was filled with warning bells, and he was able to see things more clearly. In his eyes, the darkness was the background of the profound void. Dozens of constellations and hundreds of thousands of stars were circling back and forth. Now, they were rapidly approaching and clashing with each other, bringing an unprecedented brilliance to the star map that had been relatively still. It formed an interesting contrast with the restless negative spiritual pressure on the plane of reality. Everyone's life sketches were different. They appeared in the form of constellations. Some were simple, some were complex, some were clear, and some were blurry. Zhang Yingying and Cat Eyes were simple and clear. He already had a relatively deep understanding of them in the past. He Yueyin and Bai Xinyan were powerful and their configurations were exquisite and exquisite. With his current level of analysis, there were naturally more areas that were vague and ambiguous. As for the four Ablatum Knights represented by Ghost Thunder, they were strong and had deep enmity towards him. It was even more difficult for them to draw it clearly. Within Luo Nan's mental senses, the four knights, one in front and the other three at the back, were like four balls of nebula dust that had exploded in deep space. They came pouncing over. The collision on the star map level was a bit faster than the collision on the plane of reality. And when the two sides of the blurry chaos collided, the nodes and lines that were originally not very clear were purged of the dense fog. They suddenly became much clearer. As the star map changed, He Yueyin, who was protecting the flank, issued an order, "White salt, cover." Just as her voice fell, the ceiling above the pitch-black sky exploded with a rumble. The decorative planks shattered in the explosion, turning into shrapnel that splashed in all directions. The special police officers were well trained. The shield bearers raised their shields at the same time, blocking the space above them. Clanging sounds rang out for a time. There were even a few popping sounds of explosions mixed in with the subtle cracking sounds of the shield structure being damaged. The explosion-proof shields could block the inner ring, but they were useless against He Yueyin, Bai Xinyan, and Zhang Yingying, who were roaming around the outer ring. Zhang Yingying was fine. She took 2 quick steps to the front and evaded it. The remaining 2 were within the range of the explosive shrapnel, and their reactions were completely different. Bai Xinyan's movement speed did not change at all. It was just that a cold wave suddenly rose from her body, sweeping through the air. Any shrapnel or explosive lightning was instantly frozen. Even the corresponding kinetic energy was stripped away. They rustled like snow, falling to the ground. Such an unscientific spectacle nearly made the eyes of the special police officers pop out of their sockets. Only now did they understand the meaning behind He Yueyin's so-called cover. As for He Yueyin, she did not retreat when the cold wave flooded the darkness. Instead, she advanced. Her figure could still be seen with her first step. Her second step was blurred and distorted. By the time she took her third step, her figure had completely disappeared. Only a brilliant arc of light sliced through the darkness. And the arc of light was already 30 meters away. Right now, the average distance between the 4 Ablatum Knights and the team was only around 40 meters. Right now, He Yueyin had clearly killed her way to the front of the enemy's pouncing formation. If she was even the slightest bit sluggish, there would be a fatal risk of being attacked from all sides by the enemy. But the arc of light was far too fast. They didn't have the time to truly worry about anything. The brilliant arc of light suddenly flashed and extinguished. Practically no sound could be heard as the arc of light flickered and extinguished. But a certain constellation immediately fell apart in Luo Nan's perception on the star atlas. It dimmed and disappeared. It was only at this time that the people with the sharpest ears were barely able to hear the sound of blood splattering within the dark air. Shuai Lei drew a cold breath to the side. A kill in 10 steps. Cat Eye's voice was hoarse within the encrypted channel. Ghost Thunder killed confirmed. The channel was a sheet of silence until Yuan issued a new order. 12:00 clock direction. Accelerate. Following the order, Zhang Yingying, who was in front, did not utter a word. She turned around and sped up. And at the edge of the darkness where the team met, Yuan's figure appeared. She continued to protect the flank, as if nothing had happened before. If there was any change, it would be that she shot a glance toward the center of the formation. Her target was not Luo Nan, but Xue Lei, who had just lost his voice. Chapter 231. Luo Nan paid no attention to the minute changes around him. His entire mind was focused on the changes in the star atlas. The instant Yuan killed Ghost Thunder with a single slash, she also cut open the layer of hazy nebula dust surrounding Ghost Thunder. Before Ghost Thunder died, his constellation finally appeared clearly. Even though it soon dimmed and disappeared, the internal structure of the constellation was still a good reference for Luo Nan to analyze the other Ablatum Knights of the same order. In the blink of an eye, Luo Nan's star atlas became much clearer. Correspondingly, the obscure and unclear external force that was exerted from the void became harder to hide. Luo Nan could see from the star atlas that the force was secretly interacting with the assault formation of the 4 Ablatum Knights. However, Ghost Thunder, who was at the front, was killed with a single slash. The force, which was still being deployed, was thrown into chaos. It struggled a few times before it finally scattered. Oh, crap! Luo Nan began to worry for the other side. The force was actually quite considerable, but it leaned towards the mental plane. In order to be effective on the material plane, one needed to find a more suitable entry point for interference. Therefore, it had not been able to truly move down. It just circulated and spiraled, accumulating power in preparation for a thunderous strike. In terms of judgment, awareness, and techniques for accumulating power, Yuan was 1,000 times more professional than Huang Bingjin, who had been shoved into a corner. However, the other side clearly had bad luck. It was not easy for them to have the opportunity to interfere through the use of the 4 Ablatum Knights. However, Yuan's frighteningly powerful slash had struck their weak spot. They had probably already suffered a backlash, causing the accumulated power to collapse and scatter in all directions. It was not a big deal for this considerable power to scatter, but it was a disruption to the overall situation of Frost River reality. The special police officers around Luo Nan were clearly wearing thermostatic exoskeleton armors, but they were shivering. They were affected by the corrosion of this scattered power. But soon, the nearly extinguished format pyramid on everyone's chests lit up once more. It was repaired and perfected, cleanly expelling this inexplicable chill. Your reaction is quite fast this time. Bai Xinyan gave a light praise in the channel. She took the opportunity to ask, your body is fine, right? Is there a time limit to the blessing of the Shield of Truth? It should be fine. Luo Nan responded casually. Most of his mind was still focused on the star atlas. The timely addition of the format pyramid's augmentation wasn't due to his fast reaction. Instead, it was because he was trying his best to maintain the star chart that he had drawn with great difficulty. Why was Luo Nan worried for the enemy? It was all because the effects of the energy dissipation were too annoying. In the next few seconds, Frost River reality was a scene of chaos. The trapped citizens were already terrified and restless in the darkness. They were swept by this power that was brimming with negative psychic waves. Their mental defenses were about to collapse. For a time, screams and wails rang out in Area A. Even when the gunmen went on a killing spree, it was not as miserable as this. If the hearts of the people became unstable, the life sketches would also be affected. Luo Nan had been mulling over whether or not he should give a boost to everyone within the range of his senses, but it was too late in the end. Stabilizing the souls of almost 100 people and sorting out their auras in the midst of the rampaging negative spiritual waves was beyond his ability. In the end, the star map couldn't help but shake violently. Luo Nan felt that all the stars were trembling. There were many phenomena of displacement. The structures that had appeared before were all deforming. This destroyed nearly half of Luo Nan's efforts. Damn it! Luo Nan could not help but curse. What's going on over there? Shuai Lei's gaze glanced at He Yuan a few times. In the end, he could not help but ask in a low voice. Right now, his ears were filled with screams and wails. He could not stand this atmosphere. He would rather have a few powerful enemies jump out and fight with his life on the line. But at this time, the Ablatum Knights were intimidated by He Yuan's ghost-like blade techniques and the collapse of the augmentation behind them. They hesitated to move forward, and the team advanced incomparably smoothly. Luo Nan shook his head, temporarily dispelling the vexation in his mind. He sent a message in the encrypted channel, comforting Shuai Lei and reporting the situation of his observations. It's nothing for now. It's just that someone is up to no good, but Secretary He / caused a backlash. His power has gone out of control. He can't cause any substantial damage. There were no more than 3 people in the entire team who could truly understand Luo Nan's words. However, no one doubted Luo Nan's words anymore after his successive highlights. Instead, they were affected by his train of thought. Most of them guessed and pondered. And at this time, Cat Eyes reported, my range of perception has been affected. Right now, it has a radius of 38 meters. Mr. Luo. He Yuan immediately looked for Luo Nan to confirm. Luo Nan did a rough scan. Though the star atlas had yet to dissipate, the range of his perception was not greatly affected. The positions of every Ablatum Knight were within his grasp. He immediately said, my side is fine. Zhang Yingying jumped out, how much is fine? 80 meters. The number Luo Nan reported was the same as before. In fact, the radius of his perception on the life plane had already broken through 120 meters. And it was still expanding at a pace that was neither too fast nor too slow. Oh, hold on. Did I make a mistake? Luo Nan's train of thought suddenly deviated while Zhang Yingying was still sighing with emotion. How strange. The more I look at you, the more I feel that your all-encompassing perception is abnormal. Why are you always able to see things that others can't? Is it because of the psychic's abilities mixed in? The level is very high. The perspective is different. Cat Eyes gave Luo Nan a rare positive evaluation from the side. And this was the result of her constant observation. The direction of application is different. Bai Xinyan joined in the discussion. Cat's long-range perception is closely coordinated with her body technique. Student Luo Nan seems to be more focused on pure observation. Of course, it's easier for him to be disconnected. Yes, the direction is different. Luo Nan suddenly responded. Cat Eyes needs to make a timely response to all changes within the range of her perception. Every detail needs to be clear. And I don't need to consider other problems. I just need to make a choice between precision, range, and level according to the observation requirements. It's fine. There was no way to continue this discussion. Zhang Yingying looked up at the sky and rolled her eyes. This is the strangest thing. So it turns out that your family's mental senses can be adjusted at will. You make it so that the tens of thousands of ability users who have cultivated painstakingly, pondered carefully, and finally found the most suitable soul frequency with great difficulty. Just like this, the millions upon millions of ability users who have fixed the direction of mental enhancement, how do they feel? The discussion in the encrypted channel came to a screeching halt. Luo Nan didn't know that he had instantly ended a topic. Right now his heart was filled with relief and joy. Sure enough, communication was the best way to solve problems. If it weren't for this, he would still be madly sprinting in the wrong direction. It's too thin. It's too narrow. When he drew his life sketch, there was a problem with the direction of his focus. Just like when drawing, the most taboo was to dig into the details and highlight the parts. Right now, he was unable to project his limited mind into those inexhaustible, deep layers of configurations. Look. Even though the star atlas was chaotic and endlessly turbulent, not a single one of the Ablatum knights or the trapped civilians could escape his clairvoyance. In the end, that obscure and unknown power was locked onto by his observation. This wasn't because he had dug into the sketches in great detail. Instead, it was because he had grasped the overall composition of the area of perception. He could observe its general outline and know its direction. It was enough. He didn't dig into the details. He looked at the overall situation. He was able to observe the entire domain of interference between the mental and material planes. He was able to observe the entire plane of life. Chapter 232. In order to understand the whole, one must first see. Simply see. Luo Nan's previous clairvoyance mode could not break away from the pattern of the old explanation. He had to honestly expand his domain step by step. He had to consider the body's ability to endure and process enormous amounts of information. But after changing to a new explanation, it was still a sketch to begin with. It was a general impression of the whole. It was a recreation of one's feelings and memories. One only needed to grasp one or two characteristics of life dynamics and use simple brushwork to synthesize them. This was the difference between sketching and sketching. It was the difference between meticulous brushwork and freehand brushwork. Luo Nan summarized life sketches into sketches and configurations. Sketches should be the first. This was the core of the whole train of thought. It was the true direction of application. Before the composition of the whole was confirmed, no matter how real the details were, they could be distorted and absurd when viewed as a whole. Just like the chaotic star atlas outside his body right now. The whole. The whole. Luo Nan emphasized to himself in a hypnotic manner. He closed his eyes, opened them, and then closed them again. Through this method, he forgot all of his old-fashioned modes of observation. He let his thoughts and consciousness expand outwards, to higher heights, to further places, and to wider places. At this moment, the range of his clairvoyance was like a contracting and expanding heart. It was like the rising and falling tide. Contracting, expanding, rising, falling. The frequency of the conversion grew faster and faster. The range of conversion grew larger and larger. Suddenly, some indescribable limit was broken. It was like a great river bursting its banks, overflowing in all directions. It was like an iron mold shattering. There was no longer any fixed pattern. There was an instant when Luo Nan felt that his body and soul were about to scatter into the void. Only when the dark chains trembled and the power of the "My heart's a prison" format appeared did Luo Nan retract. It was also in this instant that the range of Luo Nan's mental senses recovered to the peak value of his out-of-body state. It reached 800 meters. In a few breaths of time, the radius exceeded a kilometer and it was still expanding. The entire Frost River reality, including the 3 buildings that supported the amusement park, and even some of the surrounding areas were all within the range of his clairvoyance. Blurry constellations appeared one after another. Everyone within Frost River reality was not limited to the people by Luo Nan's side. This included Fairchild, Bays, the 7 Ablatum Knights, and nearly 100 trapped citizens. Then there were the people outside of Frost River reality. There were even the police officers on the 3 bearing buildings. There were tens of thousands of spectators. There were stars as bright as diamonds in the constellation system. There were also shadows that were hard to see. There were even dark clouds that were hazy and turbid. The shadows were of inanimate objects. The shadows were of inanimate objects. The shadows were of inanimate objects, and it was difficult to analyze them. Although he didn't try his best to depict it, there was a wonderful connection between motion and stillness, between inanimate objects and life, between the known and the unknown. Light and shadow intertwined. Light and dark corresponded. Illusory and real interacted with each other. Under their interaction, the boundaries between each constellation, shadow, and dark cloud gradually blurred. They intertwined with each other, but their trajectories were clear. The Dharma and Logos were in harmony. Finally, they turned into an endless winding galaxy that spread out. Without a doubt, this was the most profound and vast picture Luo Nan had ever drawn in his entire life. It contained layers and mysteries that were hard to fathom. If it was possible, Luo Nan really wanted to be intoxicated by it. He wanted to ponder over every detail. But today, he would no longer sink into it. He just used an independent, transcendent, wondrous perspective to capture and draw the outline of the structure of this star river. Overall, it was more appropriate to use the word star river to describe this feeling. It was as if Luo Nan was standing at the center of an enormous galaxy. The starlight was sparse in the area he was in, but three enormous and bright spiral arms unfolded in his surroundings. These arms accurately represented the number of living beings in Frost River reality and the three buildings. However, there was a hazy dark cloud entrenched at the top of each of the three spiral arms. It blocked the starlight. The three dark clouds were connected to each other, outlining a turbid domain of darkness. The domain pressed heavily above the star river. There were even many penetrations. It was difficult to see the true appearance of the inside. There was no doubt that the three dark clouds were where the secular first oblatums of the Order of Justice were located. Looking at the current situation, Luo Nan's previous judgment was probably correct. The three first oblatums were all here. Yes, the most important target of tonight had been found. The range of Luo Nan's mental senses continued to expand. Only when the limit of the range exceeded 2 kilometers did the expansion show signs of weakening. The enormous picture of the galaxy had already covered 3 prosperous blocks. The highest point was the high-altitude traffic layer, and the lowest point was the enormous underground drainage system of the city. There were tens of thousands of life sketches that represented living beings, and it was hard to count the number of stars. Of course, from Luo Nan's perspective, the pure void and inanimate objects were merely meaningless shadowy regions. Unless he was willing to expend a great deal of energy, transform his mode, and deliberately observe with clairvoyance. At this time, Luo Nan felt the pressure once more. The stars affected each other and acted upon each other. In the end, an enormous tension was formed in the depths of the river of stars. It also formed far too much redundant information. In addition, the greater the size, the greater the level of contact and the amount of information received would naturally increase. Even if he didn't actively sense it, the enormous life level of Xia City's metropolitan area was like a myriad of galaxies in the deep sky, shining light over. Luo Nan pondered for a moment. He took the initiative to reduce the radius of his senses to 1,500 meters. Then he continued to shrink it back. In the end, it reached a kilometer or so. It just so happened to include the entirety of Frost River reality and the conjoined skyscrapers within it. Now that it had stabilized, there was enough margin left. The brilliant Milky Way flowed silently, the light of the stars parted, and the shadows shifted. Luo Nan maintained a vague and subtle connection with the faintly unending starlight projection in the distance. As the range of his clairvoyance was determined, the expanding power was retracted. His detailed senses began to become more sensitive, and the interaction between them began to fine-tune. It even spontaneously affected the subtle discordant areas. Luo Nan didn't need to observe it directly to tear apart many areas of chaos. However, the dark clouds located at the top of the 3 skyscrapers were still thick and stable. It was hard to observe them. Well, at least 2 of them were like this. As for the other one, there was an excess of accumulation, but there was a lack of thickness. Why was it a bit familiar? Luo Nan had a plan in mind. He temporarily withdrew his mind and naturally reached into his pocket. His mind was free of distractions. He completely forgot that his arms were being held by Shui Lei and Cat Eyes. He didn't manage to reach the right spot. His forearm swung down, and he swung it far away. He smacked a plump and elastic spot, and there was a faint sound. Cat Eyes instantly turned her head to this side. Even though they were in the darkness and the brim of her hat covered them, her eyes still flickered with a cold light. It was so piercing that Luo Nan couldn't help but squint his eyes. However, the most important thing was to take out the object. Though his hand felt like the fabric of his pants, it wasn't his pocket. Luo Nan was rubbed twice nearby, but he was unable to pull his arm back. He could only speak to Cat Eyes. "You let go. I'll take the object." At this moment, Luo Nan seemed to feel Cat Eyes tighten her grip on his arm slightly. But in the end, she didn't say anything. She just let go of his hand. Luo Nan finally reached into his pocket and took out the metal box. He weighed it in his hand. Cat Eyes' hand noiselessly returned to his arm at this time. She continued to support him, and she spoke in a husky voice that was rarely heard, "Do you need help?" Luo Nan looked at Cat Eyes once more. Her eyes were still as bright and cold as before, but there was an unfathomable curve to the corner of her lips that was blurry in the darkness. Her lips hooked up slightly. It was quite contradictory, but there was a novel feeling that Luo Nan had never felt before. Luo Nan looked at her, and he had the urge to immediately pick up his brush and draw. Chapter 233. Break it. The cold light in Cat Eyes' eyes dimmed. She was a bit suspicious. "You're not going to use it as evidence?" Luo Nan blinked again, but he had already drafted a script in his mind. He said, "Yes. I suspect that this toy has been tampered with. The enemy has used it to establish a snake nest and lock onto our position." Many people raised their eyebrows as soon as he said this. Luo Nan's words had violated He Yuan's request. His words had entered the ears of others. But no one was paying attention to this right now. "Is that so?" Zhang Yingying turned her head in curiosity. Think back to the previous time. If the secretary hadn't killed Ghost Thunder with a single slash and affected the enemy's methods, they might have already made their move. At least this is what I feel. Luo Nan relied on the little bit of credibility he had just established to speak without thinking. In the end, his logic was a mess. But now there were people who believed him. Zhang Yingying's eyes went wide. "Then why haven't you thrown it away yet? We have to break it first, right?" "Humph, Fairchild gave this to you. If he comes back and denounces you, will he?" Luo Nan's astonished expression defeated everything. Zhang Yingying waved her hand. "Forget it. Since you say so, watch me." Her voice had just fallen when a clear sound rang in everyone's ears. It was like the trembling of a wind chime. It was pleasing to the ear and heart. Luo Nan's hand trembled slightly. He saw this rather thick metal box silently split into 2 halves. A weak electric flame flickered and then disappeared without a trace. The split was right above his thumb and forefinger. A bit of cold air seeped into his skin. It was as if a sharp and invisible blade had cut across his skin. "Hey! Luo Nan could not help but stare with wide eyes. His body sank a bit. There was absolutely no problem with applying for a severed limb. No need to thank me. Zhang Yingying beamed and waved her hand. Still not throwing it away. It should be fine. Luo Nan was speechless towards Zhang Yingying. He just replied without thinking. But his mind stirred and he added, I don't know who the first oblatum was. It looks like he's pretty average. Ghost Thunder's death completely severed the subsequent changes. Zhang Yingying could not help but roll her eyes. No matter how average he was still a clear oath first oblatum. In terms of strength, he was able to crush everyone here except He Yuan and Bai Xinyan. Just as these words reached the tip of his tongue, a flat voice rang out from the side. Of the 3 first oblatums of the Order of Justice in Xia City, Enchanting is probably the one whose words are truthful. He's the youngest, and he relies on his ancestors. His great-uncle is An Wang. Enchanting. Just as Zhang Yingying was about to interrupt, He Yuan coldly shot her a glance and pointed at her earlobe. Clearly, he was reminding them not to violate his request and chat casually. What a double standard. The boss is the boss. Zhang Yingying sent a thumbs-up emoji in the encrypted channel, her sarcasm overflowing. Luo Nan was very surprised. He looked stupidly at He Yuan. No one should have understood the purpose of what he had just said, but He Yuan had cooperated seamlessly with him. If that person was really Enchanting, then the effect of those 2 sentences would be many times better than his. He Yuan turned her gaze over and gave a slight nod. Luo Nan did not have the time to think in detail. His mind stirred slightly. He looked at He Yuan, but on the plane of his splendid galaxy form, the dark cloud that he had locked onto long ago surged. It had already lost its steadiness, and now it was surging and churning. Although its aura was astonishing, it could not compare to the other 2 majestic and solemn performances. Moreover, this dark cloud was splitting off streams of turbid undercurrents. They rushed in the direction of Frost River reality and seeped down. Luo Nan already felt a chill while the dark cloud was still circling and accumulating energy. The other's target was this place. Their malice was clear, but they were clearly impatient and angry. The color of their emotions appeared within Luo Nan's clairvoyance. The matter could not be delayed. Luo Nan casually tossed away the metal box that had already been cut in half. His mind scattered into the surrounding dark air. The metal box contained the consumables needed to create the human-faced arachnid. It was useless to take it out by itself. It would only dirty his hands. But as long as he had a matching computer and printer, he could form complex and clear-written materials. Luo Nan was probably the best companion in this small area of Xia City. At least from the current situation, the Order of Justice's research on the human-faced arachnid was not any deeper than his. The ink was currently drifting away into nothingness. Other people were unable to sense it, but Luo Nan's soul strength gathered it noiselessly. He needed it twice, but he still felt a bit awkward. His consciousness sunk into the external neuron and he opened the format pyramid interface. Through this interface, he could communicate with the Wraith Sign, who was several dozen kilometers away. He did not need the Wraith Sign to do anything. It just needed to stay there and be a model for him. However, he never expected that the Wraith Sign would be captured through the original format pyramid system. He had just set up the Galaxy Clairvoyant system to receive information from the Wraith Sign. The range of Luo Nan's clairvoyance could not reach that far, but it was just as he had sensed before. The larger the volume, the richer the information received. The Wraith Sign was not a living being. The depths of its structure were a mass of primal chaos. There was no life sketch to speak of. However, the structure of the primal chaos formed an obscure shadow under the illumination of other starlight and under the pull of the format pyramid system. The shadow was projected over a great distance. The power of a simple projection was too small. It could not be of much use, but it was a very good model. Luo Nan originally just wanted to follow the structure of the wraith sign. He wanted to copy it and make a low-level imitation. But this way, he simply threw the consumables into the projection. This way, it would be an authorized high imitation, right? It was not that simple to duplicate the human-faced arachnid. Huang Bingzhen followed the methods of the order and collected the so-called consumables. They were merely of the lowest level. The current wraith sign was too lazy to even glance at them. No matter how high an imitation was, it was just a likeness. Its functions were simplified, and its power was ordinary. But Luo Nan felt that it was enough. Not long after, a human-faced arachnid that was closer to the original form of the burning wraith floated in the air. In terms of efficiency, the order's methods were far inferior. Aside from Luo Nan, no one could see the human-faced arachnid right now. The mental plane was endlessly deep and had many layers of structure. It was like layers upon layers of dark curtains. From the human-faced arachnid, it was the best hiding place. Even Cat Eyes, who specialized in perception, or even He Yuan and Bai Xinyan, would find it hard to reach the deeper regions. But Luo Nan's mental senses were able to probe the deeper regions from the very beginning. He was completely different from other people. Perhaps it was because his mental senses were purely for the sake of observation. Under the control of Luo Nan's consciousness, the low-level human-faced arachnid noiselessly infiltrated the void. Not long after, it followed the spiral arm of the galaxy and arrived at the edge of the surging dark cloud. The light of emotion still flickered within the dark cloud. Luo Nan thought back to last week. When he faced Jack, the wraith sign had taken out a method that left a deep impression on him. The fellow had transformed into a piece of information, a bit of emotion. It had seeped into Jack's thoughts, pushing forward layer by layer, all the way to the depths of Jack's soul. Clearly, the human-faced arachnid had a similar instinct. Luo Nan did not have high expectations for the low-level version. It was fine as long as it could enter and transmit information. The human-faced arachnid swayed outside the dark cloud. It faced the light of emotion within the dark cloud and charged headfirst into it. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.